also there waiting to catch up with him.
Further exacerbated by heavy disruption in global supply chains. Mr. Speaker, amid the swirling chaos and darkened economic outlook, His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo put together a comprehensive plan which was effectively executed, leading to relatively lower debt rates of some 1,400 compared to 53,000 in Africa and over 7 million globally, lower case counts, and the economy eking out a positive growth of 0.5% in 2020 compared to the many economies that went into recessions. However, this program came at huge fiscal costs. Government undertook major fiscal measures beyond what was programmed in the budget to accommodate the increased expenditure and the shortfalls in the revenue. Therefore, government, with approval of Parliament, mobilized funds to address the following three key interventions: finance direct COVID-19 intervention expenditures to protect lives and livelihoods, support the funding gap in the budget occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic and its negative effects on revenue mobilization, and thirdly, address key structural weaknesses exposed by the pandemic. Government received significant assistance to mitigate the pandemic and its impact on the economy, which helped to reduce the fiscal burden. However, the drastic reduction in revenues, coupled with the high expenditure to contain the speed of the pandemic and to protect lives as well as livelihoods, resulted in a wider deficit of 14.7% of GDP in 2020 and 11.4% in 2021 that needed to be financed. Mr. Speaker, through these and other decisive measures, government has managed and continues to pay compensation for all public sector workers every month, keep the lights on, improve key infrastructure, and maintain security despite heightened and increasing risks. This is in far contrast to the rolling electricity blackouts, long queues of fuel stations, empty shelves in shell shops, and increased insurgent activities as reported elsewhere in Africa and even in the West. Mr. Speaker, following these interventions, financing of government and liquidity on our domestic market has severely reduced. The access to the international capital market is closed to Ghana, whilst activity on our domestic bond market has slowed down significantly. Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, let me touch on the current ongoing debt restructuring exercise. Stemming from the considerable deterioration in the domestic and external sectors, government undertook an internal debt sustainability analysis which defined public debt to include publicly guaranteed debt of the central government, partial non-guaranteed debt of state-owned enterprises, and expenditure arrears. This analysis revealed that public debt exceeded 100% of our GDP, and debt servicing accounted for more than half of total government revenues and almost 70% of tax revenues. Arising from this considerable deterioration in the domestic and external sectors, government undertook its routine debt sustainability analysis in 2022, which revealed that public debt at general government level, including SOEs, ESLA, and DACHI, in present value terms, was 103% of our GDP compared to the debt sustainability limit of 55% for countries with medium debt carrying capacity like Ghana. In addition, external debt service considered 29% of revenues compared to the 18% debt sustainability threshold. Mr. Speaker, provisional 2022 fiscal data also show that debt service comprising domestic interest payments, external interest payments, external debt amortization, and payment of domestic maturities not rolled over all amounted to 81.6 billion, constituting 85.1% of all revenues in 2022. This implies that a significant proportion of our revenues were used to service debt in 2022. Mr. Speaker, the picture becomes more dire when we include compensations of employees and transfers to statutory funds. Thus, debt service, compensation of employees, and transfers to to statutory funds amounted to 144.3 billion Ghana cedis, representing 150.4% of our revenues. Mr. Speaker, at this level, Ghana was assessed to be at a high risk of debt restraints and its debt classified as unsustainable. Let me clarify that the current state of our debt has a lot to do with the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war. This has been exacerbated by the high macroeconomic instability experienced in 2022, occasioned by downgrades by rating agencies, as well as the consequential pressures on government finances due to the actions of non-resident investors and the delayed passage of our revenue bills. Mr. Speaker, this situation is further compounded by the comparatively low levels of domestic revenue collected by government. In 2022, tax to GDP ratio was just about 12.6%, woefully below the Sub-Saharan Africa average of 18% and insufficient to meet pressures on the public purse. Mr. Speaker, following these developments, His Excellency the President, during his address to the nation on the economy on 31st October 2022, had to declare that the economy was in crisis. Government therefore outlined key strategies in the 2023 budget presented to this House on Thursday, 24th November 2022, to address the economic challenges. This was in line with the government's proactive application on 1st July 2022 for an IMF-supported program to restore macroeconomic stability, ensure debt sustainability, as well as social protection underpinned by key structural reforms. At the inception of negotiations with the IMF, it was agreed that Ghana will have to address its economic challenges on three fronts: the impossible triangle, to embark, one, on fiscal consolidation, two, to undertake debt operations, and three, to secure financing assurances from development partners. On 12 December 2022, following 3 rounds of negotiations, interspersed with several virtual meetings, a staff-level agreement was reached on the reforms to be supported under a new 3-year standard credit facility of approximately $3 billion. The staff-level agreement required, among others, the completion of a comprehensive debt restructuring covering domestic and external debt, in addition to fiscal consolidation efforts and other structural reforms. This is one of the fastest agreements for a country undertaking a debt restructuring exercise in achieving the SLA in December 2022. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance formally launched the Domestic Debt Exchange Program on 5th December 2022, seeking to restructure about 137 billion worth of government bonds and notes. As of December 2022, the total outstanding debt eligible and non-eligible holders amounted to approximately 137 billion. Subsequent extensions of dates and payments of maturities meant that the remaining stock reduced from 137 billion to 130 billion of eligible and non-eligible holders. However, the eligible bonds, as per the exchange memorandum, meant an exclusion of pension funds and bonds that were subject to swap mechanisms for monetary and exchange rate policy operations. This then brought the eligible bonds for tendering to 97,749,624,691 Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, out of the total 97,749,624,691 cedis eligible bonds for tendering, 82,994,510,128 Ghana cedis was successfully tendered. This accounted for about 85% of outstanding eligible amounts, meeting the target of 80% as expressed in the Memorandum of Exchange. Mr. Speaker, government is, however, mindful that the 82.9 billion bonds that were successfully tendered represent 64% of the outstanding debt stock of 130 billion at the end of December 2022. Mr. Speaker, in addition, though the external debt restructuring parameters are yet to be determined, government on 19th December 2022 also announced a suspension of all debt service payments for certain categories of external debt pending an orderly restructuring. Mr. Speaker, as I've indicated, the earlier debt exchange program was to alleviate the debt burden while minimizing the impact on investors and the financial sector. Participation in the program has always been, Mr. Speaker, voluntary. The details of the domestic debt exchange are outlined in the exchange memorandum, and the subsequent amendments have been publicly available. The coverage of the exchange includes all locally issued bonds and notes of government, as well as ESLA PLC and Dachi PLC bonds. Based on the results of the audit of the public debt, government excluded treasury bills and pension funds from the exchange. Mr. Speaker, since the first announcement of the DDEP program on 5th December 2022, the government has continued to engage with multiple stakeholders on the program. It has been an intense exercise of balancing compassion with the unavoidable and difficult path to restoring our debt sustainability. As a result, Mr. Speaker, a number of amendments to the terms of the offer have taken place, with the final extension deadline of 7 February 2023 and an administrative extension of 14 February 2023. The various extensions were to allow government to incorporate the feedback and insights it received from the various stakeholders, including the Council of State, the pension funds, organized labor, the Ghana Association of Bankers, MPRA, the Securities Industry Commission, Exchange Commission, National Insurance Commission, and the individual bondholders and retirees. The final terms of the DDEP was designed to address the specific concerns of the different categories of holders, including Category A, collective investment schemes and natural persons below the age of 59, Category B, natural persons 59 years old or older, and general category holders representing all other holders except Category A and B. The details of the results of the participation rates are as follows. Category A holders issued 4,109 instructions and tendered an amount of 5.9 billion Ghana cedis. This represents 6.06% of the eligible bonds. Category B holders issued 1,340 instructions and tendered an amount of 423,012,028 Ghana cedis. This represents 0.43% of the eligible bonds. And general category holders issued 4.489 instructions and tendered an amount of 76,645,190,544 Ghana cedis. This represents 78.41% of the eligible bonds. Mr. Speaker, government is mindful of the exchange's ramifications on the country's financial health. As a result, the government is developing several prudential measures to mitigate the potential impact on domestic creditors, considering the need to preserve financial stability. Billions of taxpayers' monies were used between 2017 and 2019 to rescue the financial sector. We have no intention, Mr. Speaker, to imperil that work, and we are determined to protect banks operating in Ghana and strengthen their capacity to finance the economic recovery and growth we see before us. The respective regulators have assessed the potential impact of the exchange on the financial sector. Working together, Bank of Ghana, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the National Insurance Commission, and the National Pensions Regulatory Authority are recalibrating their regulatory tools to accommodate the necessary forbearances for their respective sectors. In addition, Mr. Speaker, a financial stability fund is being established by government with the help of development partners to provide liquidity and solvency support to banks, pension funds, insurance companies, fund managers, and collective investment schemes to ensure that they are able to meet their obligations to their clients as they fall due. Mr. Speaker, government remains committed to the well-being and dignity of our senior citizens and pensioners. Indeed, it has personally, Mr. Speaker, caused me great distress as a number of our pensioners have picketed at the premises of the Ministry of Finance since Monday, February 6, 2023. I have already indicated in my press release, Mr. Speaker, dated 14th February 2023, the government will honor their coupons, payments, and maturing principles, like all government bonds, in line with government's fiscal commitments. Mr. Speaker, in seeking to understand the concerns of our senior citizens, I have met with them on 3 occasions. The most recent was yesterday, 15 February 2022, where I explained the terms of the new bonds. Mr. Speaker, I subsequently wrote to their convener, letting him know, Mr. Speaker, that all pensioners who did not participate in the bond offering are exempted. Mr. Speaker, I pray that puts paid to the need for our senior citizens to picket at the ministry. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank all those who helped in those discussions for this. Mr. Speaker, this significant milestone of the success of the domestic debt exchange program would also build momentum for external restructuring program, which has also commenced. As part of this progress, Ghana has officially asked its bilateral creditors for a debt treatment initiative under the G20 Common Framework. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, Ghana co-hosted a meeting with the Paris Club, including both Paris Club and non-Paris Club creditors, on 10th January 2023. We reiterated the requests for expedited treatment under the Common Framework and presented our economic and fiscal outlook, as well as the steps undertaken so far with the DDEP. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, we made it known that we expect the creditor committee to be formed in an expeditious way to facilitate the program to ensure that we are able to go to the fund board in March. We have started the process of negotiating in good faith with our commercial creditors. 2 preliminary discussions and exchange of information have started on a good footing with representative committees and advisors. The members have indicated their commitment to establish a creditor committee to assess Ghana's request for debt treatment under the Common Framework by end of February 2023. We hope, Mr. Speaker, our commercial creditors will understand our desire to negotiate with our bilateral creditors softer terms than the ones we anticipate to propose to them, as a speedy process with the bilateral creditors is needed to pave the way for the discussion with private creditors. Mr. Speaker, we are also approaching major creditors like India and China to ensure that our discussions with the Paris Club is accelerated. Mr. Speaker, we've also negotiated discussions with the representative of our international bond holders and their advisors, Substantive discussions are due to start with them in the weeks to come. The government recognizes the continued importance of the DDEP in closing the financing gap and enabling the government to meet the debt sustainability target of 55% of debt to GDP in present value terms by 2028. Mr. Speaker, we have already indicated that these debt operations were a composite part of a broader government response strategy for addressing the current challenges, while we continue to secure an IMF program to boost confidence in the economy. We are complementing this by enhancing our domestic mobilization efforts. Mr. Speaker, as already stated in the House in November, we did lose access to the international capital markets at the beginning of 2022. At the same time, budget implementation was confronted with domestic financing challenges from the auctions, as well as lower than estimated domestic revenue mobilization. This presented a very challenging macroeconomic environment during 2022, leading to a widened financing gap of the budget, and therefore became necessary for the Bank of Ghana to fund shortfalls at the auction market to avoid disorderly default and prevent a deeper crisis. Mr. Speaker, it was necessary for the government to seek financing from the Bank of Ghana to augment its fiscal operations for the year. The Bank of Ghana last week concluded work on its financial accounts for 2022 and reports that the total overdraft extended to government for 2022 was 37.9 billion. Mr. Speaker, in line of Section 30, Clause 6 of the Bank of Ghana Act 2022, Axis 1-2, I'm using this platform to inform the legislature of the financing of the budget by the Bank of Ghana. The domestic debt exchange exercise and the external debt restructuring program will make such financing unnecessary going forward in 2023 and beyond. Mr. Speaker, all these efforts will be greatly enhanced if the Income Tax Amendment Bill, the Excise Duty and Excise Tax Stamp Amendment Bills, as well as the Growth and Sustainability Levy Bill, which are outstanding in this August House, could be prioritized and passed. Mr. Speaker, the passage of these bills will enable government to complete 4 of the 5 agreed prior actions in the staff-level agreement since tariff adjustment by the PURC, publication of the Auditor General's report on COVID-19 spending, and onboarding of GET Fund, DACF, and Road Fund on the GIVMIS have all been successfully completed. Mr. Speaker, I cannot emphasize enough the need to secure the board approval for our IMF program by the end of March 2023. I therefore entreat the House to prioritize approval of the outstanding revenue bills and the various concessional facilities so that we would ensure that the board meets successfully in March in Washington, and we also have the appropriate resources for growth from the facilities which are concessional. Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank once again each and every one of you for your collective effort in passing the 2023 statement and the 2023 budget statement and the finance bills that accompanied it. We are still counting on you for the passage of all the outstanding revenue bills which are necessary for effective budget implementation, as well as boosting our efforts at increasing our tax to GDP from less than 13% to the sub-Sahara average of 18%. Mr. Speaker, as the international and domestic bond markets are shut for the financing of government programs, we are relying on treasury bills and concessional loans as the primary sources of financing for the 2023 budget. We therefore, Mr. Speaker, call on this House to support the government's financing requests to ensure a smooth recovery from these economic challenges. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure you that I'll come back to this August House with the necessary fiscal adjustments after the debt operation is completed for for your consideration and approval. On behalf of His Excellency the President, we wish to thank everyone who has tended and supported the domestic debt exchange program. It is a truly remarkable act of sacrifice in our nation's history. We thank those who heeded our clarion call and took the selfless, patriotic decision to participate. Your names and deeds will never be forgotten. Your timely support is deeply appreciated. God bless you all. We also appreciate, Mr. Speaker, the concerns of those who may still be uncertain in these choices, and I trust that we can continue to engage, work together to reset the fundamental issues of the economy and reposition our economy. I'm confident that the program government has set out for this year, supported by Parliament, will get us out of the economic crisis that has besieged our economy since COVID-19 reached our shores back in March 2020. I am confident that with the conclusion of the domestic debt exchange program, we will experience stability in the exchange rates, inflation, and interest rate, bringing businesses and families some respite. Mr. Speaker, with the successful completion of the DDEP, we believe that with the sustained support of Ghanaians and this august House, we will recover from this economic crisis sooner rather than later, as indicated by His Excellency President Akufo-Addo. I'm confident that the Lord who has begun this good work will carry it on to completion. We will therefore encourage honorable members to support the government's secure board approval for the IMF program to restore macroeconomic stability, ensure debt sustainability, as well as provide critical social protection for the benefit of Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, the House, and fellow Ghanaians for the attention. God bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, let me remind you of the presence of the senior citizens with us in this House. We have our seniors, our parents, who mobilize under the group known as the Pensioner Bondholders Forum. They are led here by their convener, Dr. Edu Anane Antwi, and supported by Mr. Philip Boabeng and Mr. Ango Bediaku. There are other members here present, and they came to listen to the minister and also your good selves on this very important matter. We are also happily I will in future be considering your request for ministers to come and brief the House with a different eye. Well, I'm not even sure that many of you heard what the minister said. Many of you were rather engaged in personal conversations. You were not listening to the minister. It's not that the minister was not loud, but you were not listening. And I'm going to watch those of you going to make the contributions, the comments. We had students from the Tamale Technical University, led by their tutors. They just left. They were the large group seated at my right side on the public gallery. And then we also have products of homeschool. I'm sure this is the first time some of you have heard homeschool. Education is not only the formal one, you go to school, you can also be educated at home. So we have some of the products here with us. This is such an important topic that they all want to be part of. I think the students from the Tamale Technical University are back. They will all be listening and watching you make your comments. That's why I'm drawing your attention to their presence. This statement was admitted under Order 70. And for the avoidance of doubt, specifically 72, and I want to read it because the whole nation is watching and listening to us. Order 72 says, a minister of state may make an announcement or a statement of government policy. Any such announcement or statement should be limited to facts which it is deemed necessary to make known to the House and should not be designed to provoke debate at this stage. Any member may comment briefly, subject to the same limitation. That is how your comments will be judged by me. I listened to the minister carefully and asked whether his statements were limited to only facts and designed not to provoke debate. I have my view on it. And I will also assess yours accordingly. So please, guided by the leaders, we agreed that we'll take 6 from each side of the House, 5 ordinary members, and 1 leader. And they have submitted some names to me. So I'm going to be guided by those names. The first shot will come from the minority side. And from the list that I have, we'll start with Honorable Isaac Adongo. The comments must be brief because we have only 1 hour for the comments. And we have 12 of you. So 60 divided by 12, 5 minutes each. It's not me saying it, it's the standing orders. Honorable Isaac Adongo, you may start now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, okay.
Yes, Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the matter under consideration is a very serious matter of national concern. It will require members to contribute to such an important policy of state. So, Mr. Speaker, I appeal to you to allow members to speak for 10 minutes each. Mr. Speaker, this is the biggest national policy since I was born. And we cannot allow members only to speak for 5 minutes. So, Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, if you can allow members to speak for 10 minutes each, and the leadership probably can do 15 or 20 minutes, because this is extremely important, so I play with you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Deputy Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as members of Parliament, we have tools available to us to get information from government and also to attend to the needs of our constituents. One of such tools is questions. We can also file motions. And then when we file a motion, we debate it on a matter of national importance. We also have the Order 72, which is for us as MPs to also propose some statements, and if you admit, we make such statements, we deliver them on the floor, and members contribute. Mr. Speaker, on this occasion, the request by the House was for the minister to come and brief us. The briefing is grounded on policy that has already been approved by this House. Yes, please, Mr. Speaker, one problem is that they wouldn't take their time to listen. When we approved the fiscal policy of government, the budget, now, Mr. Speaker, the minister has come to this House under Order 72. It requires of us to make brief comments. Honorable Atufosin, now I'm coming to you. Brief comments. Brief comments. Are you interested in working with the rules, or you don't want us to work with the rules? Mr. Speaker says let's go in accord with the rules of the House. In any event, you as the minority leader, if you want to do something more, there are other tools available. If you want to come by a motion to debate and get some other information, you have that tool. It's within the rules. Again, if you want to file a question, if after this engagement and you want to file a question as minority leader, it is part of your bona fides. So you can file as many urgent questions as possible for Mr. Speaker to consider. But Mr. Speaker, for you to say that because since you were born, you have not seen any matter of such national importance, therefore, it is only by giving 10 minutes each that you would be able to exhaust your point. Mr. Speaker, such an argument, such a submission for you to vary your orders, Mr. Speaker, a submission of this nature sits on stilts. And to pay attention to me, I'm responding to your argument. Hey, don't let your backbenchers distract you. Don't let your backbenchers distract you. I'm making an argument. Listen. I'm using the rules to counter you. Listen. Mr. Speaker, you should pay attention. We are talking about the rules. Unless Honorable Atufosin is not interested in parliamentary jurisprudence. If you say so, then say it into the record. We are going to work with the rules. You don't want it? So, Mr. Speaker, with respect, let's go by your direction, let's go by your ruling, and let's make progress. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, yes, minority from bench. Who wants to speak? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what has Honorable Atufosin said? He's making an appeal to you. Mr. Speaker, what I heard the Deputy Majority Leader saying is that once we approve the economic policy, this is not the first time this thing is coming. We have not approved. Mr. Speaker, if I heard when we were during the budget, the minister said this policy will be brought to this House. And he has come. Put that one aside. Mr. Speaker, Today is the first time this House is being briefed with this debt exchange program. And you could see our fathers, our grandfathers, and our grandparents are here. So, Mr. Speaker, even the majority side, today is the first time the minister is briefing you. So, Mr. Speaker, if even you in government, you are being briefed for the first time, how much more we got in minority? Mr. Speaker, we are not in government, but the minority leader is just an immediate deputy finance minister. He has an input to make. We have a republic to build. So if he's just making an appeal, then, Mr. Speaker, there are inputs I want to make in the policy brief the minister is giving. Due to that, I'm pleading with you to give 10 minutes. Is it out of place? No. This is not out of place. It's a simple request. So, Mr. Speaker, today is a special day. And, Mr. Speaker, it took the magnanimity of the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs to invite leadership of this House into Ofori Atta for IMF program brief. The Minister for Finance has never briefed Parliament on the IMF brief. So, Mr. Speaker, we've been looking for him. Today we've gotten him. Give 20 minutes each. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Deputy Majority Leader say that Parliament has approved the debt restructuring program. Mr. Speaker, that is palpable lie. Mr. Speaker, I have with me the budget statement and economic policy of government. Mr. Speaker, I refer you to page 71. Page 71, paragraph 278. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to say that, Mr. Speaker, details of the debt operations program will be announced soon to the public and investor community after the necessary engagement with all relevant stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, Parliament does not have the information our minister responsible for finance has given to us today. This is the first time this August House has had the opportunity to have a bite on this matter. Mr. Speaker, again, the statement that the minister so far has given to the public is not known to us as a House. It's not known to us as a House. And so, Mr. Speaker, if the minister is before us, it is only fair that members of Parliament will have at least 10 minutes each to speak to this matter. Mr. Speaker, I believe that as minority leader, I should be given 20 minutes minimum. 20 minutes minimum to respond to some of the concerns that the minister has raised. Mr. Speaker, this is a major threat to our economy. So I appeal to you to grant us that opportunity so that we can debate this or make comment appropriately. And let him not create impression that brief comment means speak for 2 seconds. My brief comment is a minimum of 20 minutes for your information.
Yes, please.
Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Majority Leader, yes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, Order 72. I will read first Order 72 and then come to 72 as well. Mr. Speaker, 72 reads, a Minister of State may make an announcement or a statement of government policy. Any such announcement or statement should be limited to facts which it is deemed necessary to make known to the House and should not be designed to provoke debate at this stage. Any member may comment briefly, subject to the same limitation. Mr. Speaker, the ordinary meaning of briefly is not 20 minutes as the minority leader wants us to believe. Mr. Speaker, if you come to 72, by the indulgence of the House and leave of Mr. Speaker, a member may, at time appointed for statement under Order 53, explain a matter of personal nature or make a statement on a matter of urgent public importance. Any statement other than a personal statement may be commented upon by other members for a limited duration of not exceeding 1 hour. The terms of any such proposed statement shall first be submitted to Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, an interpretation of this provision has long been given by you that the terms of 72, that is the time period within which to discuss or comment on this matter, would be applicable mutatis mutandis to the provisions of 72. That already has been determined. Mr. Speaker, I would again entreat the minority leader that if indeed they have some other tools that they want to rely on, they should rely on it. And they should not, Mr. Speaker, attempt to hoodwink this House. Mr. Speaker, we approved the budget of 2023. And whatever session that he read did not talk about the minister coming back here for an approval for debt exchange program. I was expecting him to have said so, but he rather chose to say what I had said amounted to a so-called palpable lie. It is not so. Maybe you can say palpable falsehood. But you know, I will not. Mr. Speaker, he knows that I will not mislead this House. So far, every submission he has made is outside of this standing orders. That's what we've done. And my reliance on the budget of 2023 on all fours can never be false. What you quoted, what you quoted in the budget. Mr. Speaker, my respected minority leader, Mr. Speaker, what he said did not talk about approval by this House. The minister said he would engage stakeholders, and subject to that, we approved it. Mr. Speaker, that is why when we asked of him to come and brief us, he's come to brief us. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Atta, the minority leader, and his colleagues, all this while, never took any step as a minority. They never took any step to attend to the concerns of the Ghanaian people. The minister has come to brief us, and you want to create an impression as though the minister has abandoned his responsibility. Why didn't you file a question? Why didn't you file a motion? If you are minded to get more information, what are you doing as a member of parliament? He has briefed us. He is going by the terms of our standing orders. And Mr. Speaker has given his ruling. Let's respect that and move on, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, I think enough is enough. I definitely need your inputs to be able to manage the House, but our rules are very clear. This is a statement on government policy, and Order 72 is very clear on it. The comments should be brief. The House can at any time come using other tools, particularly a motion, to debate this matter and to take a position and advise government on it. I am ever ready to admit such a motion for debate by the House. You give me an indication as to what is going to happen. Already, you started debating, even though you have to make comments. you started debating the matter. But after listening to you, I will not be able to grant 10 minutes, but I will add at least some 3 minutes, so 8 minutes each. I will stick to the 8 minutes. I will stick to the 8 minutes per person. The leaders will not get the 20 minutes as requested. I think the leaders, to be fair to them, I'll give them 15 minutes each. That should be sufficient for the House. We will definitely do justice to it, particularly so as we have the senior citizens with us. You know that they've been picketing for some days now. So it's a very crucial matter to the nation and to some individuals in this country. So please, Honorable Isaac Adongo, take this into consideration. But I want to plead with
Thank you
members.
very much,
Please,
Right Honorable Speaker.
let's use parliamentary language, not the language of debates in a chop bar or marketplace. Parliamentary language. So please, Honorable Isaac Adongo, you may start.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I feel very sad this morning. Not just because we've compelled our senior citizens who have served our country faithfully, have worked so hard to accumulate their pensions, and when we are in crisis, the vulnerable are the ones we prioritize. They are not the ones we take their monies. But unfortunately, today, they are the ones we are taking their money, and I don't know who we are going to use those monies to serve. But, Mr. Speaker, are we still a proud nation? Have we suddenly no more a proud nation that we are all over the place begging people who borrowed money from and telling them we can't pay them, and there are no consequences for this? Mr. Speaker, next time somebody serves in public office and tells you, I don't want to be paid, you should be very careful. You should be extremely careful because free things are expensive. And it is an example of what we're experiencing today. Mr. Speaker, if managing an economy is all about collecting people's monies in loans, celebrating with cake and fish, and in the end run the economy into a ditch and refuse to pay them and use that to create economic stability, then we must as well outsource this country to an artificial intelligence so they manage this economy for us. Because the management of an economy is a lot more than that. Mr. Speaker, we are in this house. When they came trying to find different vehicles to hide our public debt, they came here and said that you can take $1.5 billion even without a balance sheet, and it will not be a government of Ghana debt. They came here and said Esther PLC can take almost 10 billion Ghana cedis, and it is not public debt. They came here and said they are bringing butter to build our roads in Sino Hydro. In the 21st century, they were doing for Enchine, Vegimoko in Ghana. Bring pepper and collect salt, butter. How can this group of people that call themselves property-owning Democrats are the ones collecting people's properties? So when they come telling you we are property-owning Democrats, think twice. They will come after your property. They will come after your savings. Mr. Speaker, they will come and destroy your banking sector. We are taking 83 billion, and the impact is that the banking sector is losing, in present value terms, 41 billion Ghana cedis. How do you expect a banking sector that is almost capitalized at 30 billion to survive 41 billion? So, have you solved the problem? You've rather transferred the problem from the government to destroy our banking sector. Mr. Speaker, how come the Bank of Ghana, that is supposed to regulate our banks, was sleeping when the people were investing all their monies
in government toxic assets. We have a simple principle of single obligor limit. It is a law that says that you shouldn't ever expose yourself to one person. It turned out that 75% of all the monies in the banking sector was in government bonds. 71% of government domestic bonds were in the hands of these people. And the Bank of Ghana was watching on. Mr. Speaker, our pension funds, the National Pension Regulatory Authority said, go and risk 85% of your money on toxic government bonds. Mr. Speaker, where does that happen? And today, we are here with this boring and underwhelming statement. Mr. Speaker, we are not angry enough. As a country, we are not hungry enough. This cannot happen to anybody. And yet, you are wasting our money, you are taking our money, and you are here reading this boring statement to us. Mr. Speaker, this is not a joke. And you are even quoting the Bible. Which of the Bibles are you quoting? Quoting the Bible in taking our money, in making us poor, in denying the poor pensioner his money, and you still are quoting the Bible. It is the reason some of us don't go to church, because in the end, this is what we get. This is what we get. Mr. Speaker, this matter, I want to make an appeal to you to refer this matter back to the Finance Committee for proper oversight. The Bank of Ghana must come to explain to us how they allowed the banking sector to help itself. The pensioners must come and explain to us. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Amalgamated Trust must come to explain to us. Mr. Speaker, as we speak today, the Bank of Ghana is claiming it is going to throw $15 billion at this point. Have we approved any $15 billion? They must come and explain to us how they are getting that money. Mr. Speaker, ever since this government assumed office...
Honorable members, just focus on the statement.
Mr. Speaker, it's a statement. It is about our public debt, and it's about who gave us the money. It's the banking sector that gave us the money, and we knew, with all the rating agencies downgrading us, that it was going to crash, and the regulator was watching them until they crashed. That is about the DE. Mr. Speaker, the finance minister is required by law under the Public Financial Management Act not to allow us to meet this problem. He is supposed every year in May, when he's presenting the fiscal strategy document to Cabinet for approval, to accompany it with the debt sustainability analysis, so that we are not caught by surprise. Is it the case that he's not been developing the annual debt sustainability report? Is it the case that he has ignored the findings in those reports? He is supposed to present fiscal risk analysis to Cabinet. Is it the case that he's not been doing it? How come we are suddenly surprised and we are losing our money? Mr. Speaker, how are we going to convince any individual to trust in the state, to give 1 penny to the state? We were taught in school, Mr. Speaker, that government debts are risk-free. And Ofori Atta and his people are now saying you will lie. So we should unlearn all that we learned in school, because government debt now is more riskier than lending to Adongo. It is more riskier than lending to Adongo. So how do we now go back to reconsider the thinking of finance? That when you give money to government, you can't sleep peacefully? That when you work and you take your pension lump sum and you decide to give to government and live on your coupons, please, you are naked, because you will go hungry and you can't buy your medicines. And we are proud to come and stand here and be quoting the Bible in telling this bitter page. How is that possible? Mr. Speaker, there must be consequences. There must be consequences. People cannot destroy our livelihood. People cannot ruin us. And when you ask them to leave their office, they say they will move. A job that we are not paying you, you are not willing to resign. And every day you are giving us one funeral after the other. How can we always be crying because you are a finance minister? Mr. Speaker, this matter must be properly investigated by this House. And I appeal to you not to end this matter today by this route that it came, and that we must have a proper process to provide oversight and give the people... You cannot be proud of this achievement. You went and told the investors in Eurobond market that you produce 500,000 barrels of oil as a country. Have you produced 200,000 barrels?
Your time is up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. We will now have to listen to Honorable Kweku Kwatin, the chairman of the Finance Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Honorable Minister, for the statement. Mr. Speaker, listening to my colleague, Honorable Adongo, it is clear, Mr. Speaker, that the debate as to how we got here will never end. The debate as to why we have had the need to do debt restructuring in our economy cannot end. But, Mr. Speaker, one reality is not debatable. It is the fact that we are here. And like many other countries, not only is our city under pressure, the cost of living is rising, and our people are looking for solutions. Mr. Speaker, it is in our collective interest. It is in our collective interest to come together as a people and find the kind of solution that would make our economy better going forward. Mr. Speaker, debt treatment and the domestic debt exchange program, as has been deployed by government, is good, but it is not enough. Mr. Speaker, the state of our economy now would require more than a debt treatment. Mr. Speaker, not only should we support government to cut the interest commitments that has burdened our economy, we must pursue an aggressive program to rein in expenditure. And we must do that not just for today, we must do that going forward, Mr. Speaker. I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that in doing this, and I speak not just to the executive, I also speak to ourselves as members of parliament. In cutting expenditure, charity must begin at home, and we must lead by example. Mr. Speaker, how many times have we not heard the people who elected us into office say that they have issues with the V8 that we use? How many times have we not heard our people complain about the expenditure we take? I thought you said I should shout. Mr. Speaker, I'm making the point, Mr. Speaker, that the problem we have on our hands today is not just a debt treatment matter. There is a need to deal with a fundamental weakness that has characterized the management of our economy for decades. We are reaping what we have sowed as leaders, as governments, and as a people. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not just the politician that must lead by example. Our friends in labor must moderate the demand for increased wages. We must know that government expenditure can come from nowhere but either taxation or from borrowing. And when we put pressure on political leadership, the consequence is what we see before us today. Mr. Speaker, we should stop as a country. You know, Mr. Speaker, because I said, as politicians, we must lead by example. My colleagues don't want to listen to me. We are never going to address the problem on our hands by pointing political fingers at our opponents and hoping that when we come to power, that we will do any better if the fundamental weaknesses continue to exist. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion on the debt, on the expenditures, we must simply stop distributing wealth we have not created. We must stop spending money that we do not have. But Mr. Speaker, it would not even be sufficient to just rein in expenditure. Mr. Speaker, we must embark on an aggressive program to mobilize more revenue from within ourselves. We cannot continue hoping that somebody would pay their taxes in some country and then those people would lend the money to us or would advance the money to us as grants. A country that lives like that is living a lie. And we will be here again if we don't change. There will be another debt treatment in the future if we don't begin to mobilize more revenue. Mr. Speaker, not only do we call on government to be more radical in punishing people who do not want to pay their taxes, I also think that as a people, we must be more tax compliant. We must tell our constituents that government can only have money that we give to government. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that if we would learn from the things we are seeing today, if we would cut expenditure, if we will live within our means, we will live a better economy for the future. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member, thanks so much. You used 6 minutes, 44 seconds. It's now the turn of Honourable John Jinapo.
Right, Honourable Speaker, let me first of all thank you for demonstrating leadership. But for you, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister won't be here. Yeah. It's not as if the Finance Minister requested upon you to come and brief the House. Mr. Speaker, it is leadership, both majority and minority, emanating from the minority side. And with your good counsel, we've had to pull the Finance Minister today to come and brief us on this very toxic domestic debt exchange program. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister has spoken a lot. And like you rightly said, we have elderly people, respected people, people from the international community seated there. When you digest all this, what does it mean? That's the most important thing. What has the Finance Minister told the people of Ghana? Mr. Speaker, I sum it simple. If you evaluate what the Finance Minister is doing and evaluate what #1 of Men's Gold did, the two are synonymous and the same. The funny is that there is no difference. #2, Mr. Speaker, if #1 had gotten this condition, his financial instrument or financial company would have existed as we speak today. And like Adongo said, there's a principle in economics known as the transversality condition. Yes. The transversality condition states that so far as government survives, government will never default. That is why when you are accounting for the capital asset pricing model, there's a risk-free rate. The risk-free rate is the rate that government gives. If you want more, that is if you want to take risk, then you go for a premium. For the first time in the history of this country, it never happened. For the first time, government is saying that it is so broke, the economy has been so mismanaged, that they can't even honor the coupon payments on money that government took from not just ordinary individuals, but from our old mothers and fathers
whose survival, whose livelihood depends on the little coupons that they get. Mr. Speaker, let me do a quick analysis. If you were to invest 100,000, just 100,000, let's even assume that Mr. Ofori Atta and the finance minister says they'll give you all your money. With the rate of inflation at more than 50%, in 1 year, by the time you take your principal, the actual value, which is the purchasing power, would have been reduced to 66,000. And you can just check the value and discount it to the present value with that rate. And if you apply the discounting factor, you know the present value of a future investment that you are supposed to earn. As if that is not enough. As if that is not enough. The Bank of Ghana, as of 2021, had advanced over 30 billion to the government. Then in 2022, the Bank of Ghana, and I remember Honorable Atufosin raised that issue, that they were giving government so much money. The Bank of Ghana issued a statement and told us that it's an overdraft. An overdraft is a short-term debt instrument, because you must pay immediately. Immediately, the Minister of Finance got the 40 billion. He announced that he has converted it into bonds. Why do you do this? You see, the issue is credibility. That is why the women and the men who are old, they don't trust the minister. Because look, the president told us that there will be no haircut. It turned out that it was false. The minister himself promised us that individuals will not be part of this whole domestic debt instrument. He's here. He's on record. On record. Then on the eve of Christmas, he issued a statement that he will now exempt pensioners, and he's now bringing individual bondholders into the whole frame. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious matter. This is not an NDC matter. This is not an MPP matter. This is a national issue where all of us ought to put our political difference aside, look straight into the Minister of Finance and tell him, the minister, you will not touch the pensioners today, you will not touch them tomorrow. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, this House, I plead with you, and I plead with leadership, that we should pass a resolution that for the first time we are putting our political difference aside. We should pass a resolution telling the minister, I'm not interested in his resignation. If he doesn't want to resign, that is their own cup of tea. Because the problem is not just Ofori Atta. The problem is Ofori Atta, Dr. Bawumia, and Akufo-Addo. This trilogy, this three, they are the problem of Ghana. And Mr. Speaker, problems cannot solve problems. Solutions solve problems. I'm therefore calling on Parliament to pass a resolution compelling the Minister of Finance, just as he has done in paragraph 27, page 7, that all the pensioners would be exempted from this domestic debt exchange. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, not just exempt them. Allow them to clap. Not just exempt them. The bondholders, the pensioners, individual bondholders, their coupon rate, their principal, and the term of the original agreement should be succinct, must stand and stand firm as far as some of us are. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, we must learn as a nation. I want to commend people who have stood with us. People like Kwame Pianim, people like Kofi Amwabin, people like Sophia Akufu, and even in this house, I salute the venerable majority leader, the Honorable Oseche Mensabosu, for his stance on the individual debt bondholders as far as we are concerned. Yes. You have demonstrated leadership, leader. And that you have a conscience. And I call on you to do same before the old men and women watching us today. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 ways that government raises revenue. And Honorable Kwakwati, you mentioned 2. 1 is taxation, 2 is borrowing. But there's a 3rd one. That is seigniorage, printing of money. How can the Bank of Ghana advance more than 40 billion to the government of Ghana in 1 fiscal year? What is the size of Ghana's economy? 55% of our. What is the size of Ghana's economy? I'm not surprised that the IMF has appointed Leonard Chumo as the financial supervision advisor to the Bank of Ghana. Mr. Chumo, please let me thank you and welcome you to Ghana. But let me plead with you, please open your eyes at the Bank of Ghana. I cannot trust that governor in one way or one bit. I beg you, open your eyes. Open your eyes. Scrutinize the documents and ensure that the right thing is done. Because in this chamber, when they brought the Sino-Hydro agreement, we cautioned them. It's not as if we did not caution them. We are also Ghanaians. Yes, we might be interested in political power, but we are Ghanaians. We told you that your so-called barter trade will not work. Today you've gone round and round and round.
Honorable member,
and you are here. Mr. Speaker, on that note, I want to end by appealing to you that the fiscal responsibility regulation that was suspended ought to be reinstated so that we can avoid this cliff. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. God bless you.
Honorable members, we have been joined by a very high-powered delegation from the German Parliament. They are here on a study visit, and they focus on meeting the Committee on Legal Affairs. It's made up of members of Parliament and the staff of Parliament. And I have the pleasure to introduce them to you. They come from the, as I said, the Legal Affairs Committee of the German Parliament. They are here actually to interact with their counterparts, gain in-depth knowledge on the workings of the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs and other committees, engage you, members of Parliament, on issues relating to the rule of law in Ghana, transparency and accountability in the public and private sectors, conditions of correctional facilities, as well as human rights for all. The visit is further intended to create a platform for networking between honorable members here and their German counterparts, with an aim to deepening relations between the two legislatures. I had the pleasure and joy of visiting the German Parliament a number of times. I had colleagues there. That time I was minority leader, and almost every year I was in Germany. So I can testify that there's a lot to benefit in having good relations with the German Parliament and the members of Parliament from Germany. They are being led by the chairman of the committee, that's the Committee on Legal Affairs. Her name is Honorable Lisbeth Winkelmeer Becker. Chair, you are most welcome. The other members are Honorable Carmen Weji. I'm sorry if I have not got it right. You know, my German is almost zero. Honorable Israel Leon Limbacher. Honorable Stephen Mayer. Honorable Phil Stephen. Honorable Philip Hartingway. Honorable Stephen Brandner. And Honorable Clara Ann Berger. delegation is being supported by the staff of the Parliament, 2 members of staff. One is an interpreter, and the other is a secretary. The interpreter is in the person of Mr. Michael John Bakabi. And the secretary is Miss Sarah Henneman. Honorable members, on behalf of the House and all of you, I warmly welcome the delegation from the German Parliament to our Parliament, and I wish them a fruitful deliberation. What we are just witnessing is not debate, it's comments. It's just comments on a statement that has been made by the Minister for Finance. And so when we go to the debate, then it will be something else. It's very difficult to get the line right between comments and debates. And so, presiding officers, we have the heat on us. I'm doing my best to manage it. I hope at the end of the day, I'll still have all the members with me. So, you are most welcome. And it's the turn of a member from the majority side, a deputy minister at the Ministry of Finance, our own member of Parliament, Honorable Abina Osei Asare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. And I also want to thank the people of Ghana for the immense support we have enjoyed from you in these difficult times. Indeed, it hasn't been easy, but for your support, we have come this far, and for that, we are grateful. Mr. Speaker, I also like to use this opportunity to thank all those who participated in the domestic debt exchange. We are grateful to you for your support. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is one of the processes that will get us out of where we are to a safe landing zone where we can all work together to bring our economy back on track. Mr. Speaker, before I continue, I just want to put out there some impressions that have been created that is not true. Mr. Speaker, on the 3rd of February 2022, we met the majority side and members of Parliament, the parliamentary service staff. And in that meeting, we actually said that we would want Parliament to give the Minister of Finance an opportunity to come over here and then explain the debt exchange to us. So if we stand here and say that we never did anything like that and that the minister was called here, Mr. Speaker, on the 7th of February, if you remember, I even mentioned it. Mr. Speaker, on the 7th of February, the first day that this House, we came back, I mentioned that we mentioned it on the 3rd of February when we met Parliament and the government business. And so we are waiting for the Speaker to give us a date. So, Mr. Speaker, this is something that has been on the table. We're waiting for the appropriate time to do that. And we are grateful that you've given us the opportunity to do that today. Mr. Speaker, secondly, I also want to put it out there that an impression has been created that government is taking away people's money. Mr. Speaker, we have a situation on our hand. Government is saying that I cannot continue with the bonds that I have taken from you. I cannot continue to disburse or to redeem it as it is. Because of where we are now, our debt levels have become unsustainable, and we need to do something about it. Mr. Speaker, anytime you mention our debts, our brothers on the other side fumble. These are debts that we got right from the first day Ghana borrowed to date. This is not an MPP debt. This is a national debt that was created from the first day Ghana decided to borrow to date. So let's get that clear, that it is not an MPP debt. This is a national debt that we have borrowed right from the time Ghana came into being, and Ghana needed to borrow money to date. Mr. Speaker, last year, we were paying our debts, we were servicing our debts until things started getting difficult. Things started getting difficult, not as a result of only domestic issues, but also external issues. So it became difficult, and we were using about 70% of our tax revenue to service interest payments alone. Government says, I cannot continue like that. I have to do something about it. And we believe that with the support that we have enjoyed so far, we can move to the next stage. I just want to put on record, Mr. Speaker, to explain that the debt exchange, the domestic debt exchange, are in 3 categories. The first one is the category A, where we have people below 59 years. Government is saying that you will get your principal, you will get a coupon of 10%, and that initially when we came out with the debt exchange, we had wanted to pay it within 12 years. Upon consultation with several members, government said, I am bringing it to 5 years. For those below 59 years, it is going to be 10%. You are going to get your coupon at 10%, and by 5 years' time, you should get your whole amount. That's the whole principal. So, Mr. Speaker, nobody is taking away anybody's money. And when you come to the category B, Mr. Speaker, these are people 59 years and above. We agree with the sentiments that have been raised. And government is saying, effectively looking at the 12 years of the various bonds that we had, it was going to, the effective interest rate was going to be about 18.5%. Government says, looking at what the situation where I find myself now, the 18.5% is going to be difficult for me to pay. But I want to redeem the coupons for you. So I am giving 15%. I am giving 15% instead of the 18.5%. So yes, we understand you have sacrificed about 3.5. And we really appreciate that. Our pensioners, we really appreciate the sacrifice you have made for us. And we are grateful for that. So Mr. Speaker, it is 15%. And that 15% to government is saying within 5 years, you can have your principal. Mr. Speaker, if for any reason, for anybody who signed on the domestic debt exchange, if for any reason you want your money, something has come up, there's an emergency, you want your money, with this debt exchange, you can go on and redeem, get your principal and the coupon due you, and that is it. Mr. Speaker, in the 3rd category, we have any other person that does not fall between category A or B. So these are the banks. And thankfully, we saw some 6% participation in the category A, which is below 59 years. And for category B, our pensioners, we saw about 0.43% participation. And for the category C, which is the banks, the insurance, and all those people, we also saw about 78.4% participation in that. Mr. Speaker, it is something that we need to move to the next level. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, there are 3 outstanding revenue measures that we believe that if we should pass, will also help us reach an agreement come March. So we are pleading with the House that the income tax bill, the growth and sustainability bill, as well as the amendment of the excise duty tax. And we are asking that you support us pass these 3 revenue measures as well to complement the debt exchange that we have done to help us reach an agreement with the IMF. Mr. Speaker, with this opening, we believe that we can also go ahead and engage our external borrowers and make sure they also come on board. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is something that we believe we must do to help our economy move from where we are now to a place where we all can feel comfortable, inflation rates can drop, the market will start improving.
First Deputy Speaker to take the chair.
Yes,
Mr. Speaker, we believe that with the successful implementation of the domestic debt exchange, it will open the opportunity for us to engage our external partners and also for them to come on board so that we can move from where we are to a place where we can help bring inflation down, bring food prices down, and the economy starts working again. Mr. Speaker, government spent billions of cedis to restructure the financial sector. This same government will not see to it that the financial sector collapses. That is why government is doing everything possible to make sure that even in the midst of where we find ourselves, it will support the financial sector as well. So, Mr. Speaker, we thank our colleagues on the other side, we thank our pensioners, we thank the people of Ghana, and we are...
sad day for our country. A country which had so much prospect. First black nation to attain independence, the shining black star of Africa. We used to be the poster child of economic growth, of democratic stability. This was a country that many other African nations were asked to emulate. Today, all of those gains have been eroded. We are at the precipice. We are on the brink of economic catastrophe, of Armageddon, of a cataclysmic economic disaster because of a finance minister who has betrayed the trust of the Ghanaian people. Mr. Speaker, what is even so obnoxious and irritating is the minister's opening remarks that this is a time to rejoice in the Lord. Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rejoice in the Lord. The minister forgets that in Proverbs chapter 29 verse 2, the Bible says that when the wicked rule, the people mourn, the people groan. There is pain and there is anxiety when the wicked rule. Proverbs 29:2. This is no time to rejoice. If the minister is still rejoicing, then our problem is bigger than I ever imagined. Because it tells us that the president, his vice president, his finance minister, they are in a bubble. They are totally out of touch. They are in a world of their own. And they are still in a rejoicing mood. They can come to Parliament and tell us to join them to rejoice in the Lord. At a time that senior citizens, the aged, the vulnerable, it was Mahatma Gandhi who said that the true measure of any society is how that society takes care of the vulnerable. People who have served this country with distinction, they did not join their colleagues who left for greener pastures. They stayed here to reconstruct this nation. They toiled, they sacrificed for decades. Their pensions are being taken away from them, pensioner board holders. They have to picket days on end. And the president has not even invited them to listen to them. You have distinguished, illustrious sons and daughters of this country. Our role models, people we look up to. What would the younger generation say when they see those images? A whole former Chief Justice picketing. And let me salute the former Chief Justice and her colleagues. That despite their old age, despite their frailty, they have decided to stand up to be counted. And Mr. Speaker, what is even so annoying, when the finance minister met them, the finance minister, all he had to tell them was that Boami Namin Boao. You are actually doing Boami Namin Sieu. And you are saying Boami Namin Boao. How? How is this? Taking people's money from them, people's hard-earned investments, their life savings, and then you add insult to injury. Apart from rejoicing, quoting wrong scriptures that don't align with the times, you are adding Boami Namin Boao. Let the records reflect that what the minister is actually doing is Boami Namin Sieu. Mr. Speaker, all the things we have heard today from the finance minister is what the former Chief Justice, the Venerable Ofori Atta, calls dubious explanations, all royalties paid to her. Dubious explanations. Mr. Speaker, this finance minister is still blaming Russia-Ukraine war, so-called exogenous factors. Why is it that we are the only country in Africa currently going through a debt restructuring program? Why? The only country going through a domestic debt restructuring program. Why? Russia, Ukraine didn't affect Nigeria, didn't affect Senegal, didn't affect Cameroon, it didn't affect Togo, Benin. So we have a finance minister who even refuses to take responsibility. What I expected, and let the records reflect, Mr. Speaker, that it is those of us on this side who fought and got the minister to come here today. He didn't come on his own volition. He will have gone ahead with this program without the input of Parliament, without the approval of Parliament. I raised this matter and made an application, an urgent application before the Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, what is even more troubling is that instead of this finance minister to come to Parliament today and read a resignation speech, he has come here to offer dubious explanations.
Honourable Member, is the Speaker to take the chair.
Yes, Honourable Member, you have two minutes. Two.
Mr. Speaker, when you read the literature on this debt exchange program, the Jamaican model has been presented as a gold standard. And the few countries who are unfortunate, unlucky, who are doomed, like Ghana is today, are asked to adopt the Jamaican model. What did the Jamaicans do? Mr. Speaker, immediately they ran their country into the ditch. The Prime Minister of Jamaica, in 2011, Prime Minister Bruce Orett Golden resigned. The Finance Minister resigned. The Governor of the Central Bank of Jamaica resigned. Mr. Speaker, that governor was called Derek Lattenberg. Brian Whitner took over from him. What the Jamaicans also did is that they collapsed 40 public institutions. 40. In Ghana, the president is still making appointments, elevating people to ministers of state, increasing the size of government. Mr. Speaker, the records of this House rather show that between last year and this year, government expenditure has gone up by 82 billion Ghana cedis. Can you believe that? At a time, you are taking pensioners' money, taking individual bondholders, when you promise them that there will be no haircut.
Honourable Member, your time is up.
Just 10 seconds, Mr. Speaker. The Jamaican model is important. I'm wrapping up. The Jamaicans also established an economic program oversight committee, which included local business community, labor unions, CSOs, MPs, government officials to oversight. They also implemented the fiscal responsibility law to make sure that debt to GDP does not exceed 60%. And they sought parliamentary approval for all of this. They carried the people along. The finance minister has deviated from this gold standard. And this finance minister must go. I support the demand for a resolution by this House that the pensioners' bondholders, the individual bondholders, should be exempted from this draconian Ken Ofori Atta inflicted, Dr. Bawumia inflicted, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo inflicted debt exchange program. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, it's now the turn of the Honourable Stephen Amwa.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for
the opportunity given me.
Honorable member, don't be intimidated by the fact that you are before them. Go ahead.
Thank you. That is why you always be my biological father. Mr. Speaker, before I speak, sorry, is it wrong? Okay. Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, I would like to honestly let our fathers, our grandfathers and mothers, and the bondholders who are being confronted with this unpalatable but an inevitable fiscal policy that we as a country have to implement. I would like to say that we empathize with them. The hardship confronting us as a country, it was first done credibly even in the 2023 budget statement that the President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, through the budget statement by the Finance Minister, demonstrated tremendous amount of empathy. So we would like to let them understand that one day we are all going to grow to become retirees and pensioners. And it is not anything that we are all happy with. But I would like to give this scenario. If you have a child that has been diagnosed by a medical doctor and has prescribed a particular medicine, the medicine might, in the short term, give some sort of uncomfortable situation such as vomiting and others. But without the medicine, you lose the child. This is where we find ourselves in. This is not a time to adopt political gimmicks because we want power. This is not a time to demonstrate high level of unconscious incompetence simply because we do not understand the situation. It is very bad. Nobody is happy with what is happening. My government, the President, Finance Minister, all of us, even my brothers from the other side, they know that the situation we find ourselves in today, one of the best fiscal reforms is to adopt exchange of bonds with high debt with the low ones. It happened in Jamaica, it happened in Uruguay, it happened in UK in the 80s, it happened in Greece, it happened in Argentina. So this is a global policy. And I think we need to correct this. Mr. Speaker, Finance Minister saying we should give thanks to God doesn't mean that he's happy with the situation. 1 Thessalonians 15, 16 to 18, the Bible states emphatically without any ambiguity that in all circumstances we should give thanks to God, and that is the will of God for his children. So our fathers and mothers, it's not that Finance Minister is happy about what is happening, but Finance Minister believes in God. We all believe in God, and that God says that whether we are going through pain or pleasure, we should give thanks to God. It doesn't mean he's not happy with it. Mr. Speaker, I want people to understand why, what has happened, why the DDP. We need to explain to people. There is holdout. When we say holdout, it means the issuer, which is the government, is not in the position to perform its obligation of paying what he owes. It is something we are not happy with it. How did we get here? We got here because we are having high interest rate payments. It started from 2012. It increased to 2016. It started reducing up to 2018-19. Then we had this global crisis that put up an uncontrollable situation. Said that for about 21 months, we're going through impaired productivity in our country. We're not going to work, but we're being paid. From where? Private sector had to serve over 40,000 people. Paying corporate taxes. We had shortfalls, revenue generation, over 12 billion. The only way government could perform its statutory obligation was to resort to debt financing because revenue generation domestically was an uncontrollable situation. And what do we do today?
Do we continue to allow Ghana to get destroyed because of politics? How we got here? Have you forgotten that we're in the same house? Because of the challenges, we are fashioning out fiscal policy reforms, such as revenue generation. But because of the seemingly balance that we have, there was disagreement that eroded the confidence of the investors, and that put us in a situation where we could not even access private sector to perform over 10 billion a year import bills. We all contributed to this apart from the global. So what we are telling our fathers and mothers today is that we beg them. The situation where we are is an inevitable policy that we need to adopt. What we can assure them with is that Jamaica did, and at a point the same new bonds, their yield began to increase. The market began to do well. They were able to reduce their interest payment, and they went back to the international market, and Jamaica got well. I can assure Ghanaians, if they will be patient with us, there were few challenges in rolling out the implementation. We are sorry, but I'm telling them today, as good managers of this economy, if they will agree with us and accept what we are doing today, in the near future and the long term, they'll be happy with this government. But the politics and the propaganda, other people in the name of securing political capital will not benefit this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell them that government is not sleeping. On the side of the government, we are cutting 30% emolument for the executives. We are reducing fuel by 50%. We are taking away almost all the irrelevant projects, making sure that the fiscal space that is causing all these problems, we can consolidate it. So, Mr. Speaker, all that we are saying today is that, yes, some of the points raised by my brothers from the NDC, I agree with them perfectly. Now, we don't consider why we are here. When somebody is dying, if there's a convulsion, your child is going through convulsion, you don't ask how he got there. You find solution to that. And one of the solutions we want to find as a government today is to make sure that we put in place measures and policies that going forward, whenever there is global crisis, this very country of ours, going through the sinusoidal performance of our economy and other things, we can handle them well. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to speak too much, but what I want to say, sorry, I don't. Mr. Speaker, what I can assure my brothers from the other side, that they are doing well, putting the government on our feet. But they should also do one this time and think of how this country, as a result of collectivism, we can secure things.
Your time is up. Your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Honourable members, we now listen to Honourable Eric Opoku.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, typical of the Finance Minister, he began the statement with a quotation from the Bible. And I would like to do the same thing. Mr. Speaker, 1 Kings, chapter 12, verse 6. Solomon once sought the expertise of old men who helped him make important decisions about the kingdom of Israel. But, Mr. Speaker, he did not touch the livelihood of these old men. He sought their expertise, but never touched the livelihood of these people. Mr. Speaker, every policy has three key elements. Listening to the minister, I was trying to see if I can understand the three key elements in the policy. The first one was the definition of the problem. The minister attributed everything to external factors. Mr. Speaker, we are where we are because of their unbridled borrowing for consumption. Mr. Speaker, when he took over, the total debt stock of our nation was 120 billion, as reported by Bank of Ghana. Today, you are here reporting that our debt within 6 years has ballooned to 575 billion Ghana cedis. indicating that within 6 years, you have added 455 billion to the national debt store. What did you use that money for? You are an investment banker. You know that when you borrow, you are expending future revenues and you pay in future. How did you invest the resources? Today, we have been asked to repay and we can't get the money to pay just because you borrowed for consumption. So, Mr. Speaker, we are in this morass, this economic quagmire, just because the government decided to borrow for consumption as if the world was coming to an end. That is the problem. If you don't have a better appreciation of the problem, there is no way you can prefer solutions. So if you continue to attribute it to Ukraine, Russia, to COVID, then there is no way you can solve the problem. Let's understand, let Ghanaians understand that you have created the problem. And that from today, if you intend to borrow again, you will borrow for investment and not for consumption. In that case, we can have some confidence that the minister is now on the proper track to achieve the target set for himself. Mr. Speaker, the second point is the goal. What is the minister seeking to achieve with this policy? The minister is seeking to achieve fiscal space to grow the economy so that we can have resources to pay our loans. Mr. Speaker, now you are postponing payment of debts. You owe people. You are saying that I cannot pay you today. I'm postponing the payment so that I can have space to borrow more. How then are you going to pay? If you want to have fiscal space to grow the economy, you are borrowing today. And before you borrow, you have been given a conditionality. Go and reduce your debt from the 100.3% of GDP to 55%. And just because of that, what you're saying is that, no, I cannot pay you today. I'm pushing it up to 2037. After 2037, I'm going to borrow again, invest that money to grow the economy so that I'll be in a capacity to pay my debts. How can you do that, Mr. Speaker? So the goal is not achievable. And then, Mr. Speaker, what instrument is the minister seeking to use to address the challenge? He wants to fall on the savings of the aged, our mothers and fathers who have contributed their quota to this state. And as we speak, they don't have anything to live on except the little that they have saved. The minister is saying that without the savings of these people, Ghana cannot get out of the trouble. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, we are already in the mess. We are already in the mess. Banks are facing liquidity challenges because they're dependent on the deposit of their customers from which they bought the bonds, and the bonds are not being honored now. So when you go there, credits have dried up. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, prices of goods and services have passed the atmosphere. They have got into the stratosphere. Everybody is complaining everywhere. Employment is skyrocketing. Living conditions are very hard. Everybody in this country is suffering. What about those who don't have any means of survival except the little savings they have made for themselves? Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that under the watch of this government, they promise giving one constituency $1 million every year. And just because of this, they establish authorities to ensure that these funds are utilized in the best interest of Ghanaians. The funds were never disbursed, but the authorities are there, taking monies from the taxpayers to pay them and to service their offices. Mr. Speaker, if you want to reduce government expenditure, you can shrink the government, reduce the size of the ministers, reduce the size of government, collapse institutions, irrelevant institutions. You have Minister of Trade, you have the experts there, they are ready to work for us. You have established one district, one factory secretariat, doing what? You have ministers all over, ministers without portfolio. Many of them are the presidency. What are they doing? Shrink the government. Mr. Speaker, what is important for all to understand today, that it is not about our retirees alone. It's not about the pensioners alone. We are all at risk. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General in its 2021 report has reported to this House under paragraph 239 that even this government, our SNIT contributions, the contributions that government workers have paid for SNIT has not been paid to SNIT. And government, as we speak, is owing SNIT to the tune of 4.33 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance succeeded in convincing SNIT to accept bond valued at 1 billion as part payment of the debt. And today you are saying that you are not going to pay for the bond. You are postponing payment. So what happens to people who go on pension? So it is going to affect all of us. Don't forget that we passed a law under which 5% of our state contributions is given to fund managers to manage. These fund managers, including enterprise. These fund managers have invested these monies in bonds, anticipating that the bonds will be honored and they will get interest, and then when people retire, they will have their monies. Today, the minister is reporting to this House that such bonds cannot be honored. So all of us, all government workers, wherever you are located, it is not a fight for the aged alone. It is a fight for all of us. Yes. Mr. Speaker, this thing must not be allowed to happen in this country. In fact, I am even confused. I have been asking simple questions. Now you are saying that you don't have the money. You cannot pay your interest. So you are pushing it up. 2027. What do you have in the pipeline to pay for these monies in 2027? Yes. What investment have you made? In 2037, where are you going to get the money from? It is just because of political expediency. Yes. You know, you just have 2 years. You have just 2 years in office. So within the 2 years, you are pushing all the debt beyond 2 years so that you will leave the scene. And whoever succeeds, you will come and shoulder the mess that you have created. This thing must not be allowed to happen. Mr. Speaker, the minister ought to have resigned long ago. The Minister for Finance ought to have resigned long ago. Our colleagues, on the other hand, they share this view with us. They agree with us that the minister is messing up the economy. It is because of his relationship with Mr. President that he is still in office. And he continues to destroy the foundations of this economy. So Ghanaians must rise up. We must rise up against the incompetence, the recklessness of the Honorable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Member, your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, on this note, I thank you very much.
More time because the clock.
I thank you very much, and then conclude that the minister will never be forgiven. He will never be forgiven for destroying the economy of this country and impairing the lives of even children yet unborn in this country. Posterity will never forgive him. He should resign today. He should resign today.
Honorable Member. Honorable Member. Honorable Eric Opoku, I heard you quote the Bible, but this your last statement is not biblical at all. I say your last statement. Your last statement.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, there is forgiveness, but in the judgment day, no one will be forgiven.
Honorable members, it's the turn of the Honorable Ajapa Mesa. Honorable Ajapa Mesa.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement ably made by the Minister responsible for finance. Speaker, I must commend the Minister for attending upon the House to deliver this message that clearly puts in context where we are coming from and what has necessitated the need for him to go through this program, and obviously steps that he is taking going forward to ensure that we bring our economy back onto its feet. Speaker, I must, before I even begin my contribution, indicate my strongest empathy towards elders and senior citizens who have appeared before Parliament today, obviously following from their initial picketing at the Ministry of Finance in the course of the week. Indeed, taking a step back and listening to the commentary, the narrative in the public space, it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, respectfully, that the honest intent of the Finance Minister to provide, especially the senior citizen pensioner bondholders, an opportunity to also consider and, if possible, participate in the debt exchange program has clearly been misconstrued. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not surprising to me because with my past experience as a banker, I know that what the Finance Minister is seeking to do, really, having regard to how bonds work, is that you purchase the instrument for a fixed tenure. What that means is that you are not entitled ordinarily to redeem that bond until it matures. However, there's a secondary market where if for some emergency you are unable to wait for the maturity of the bond, then you can go to that secondary market to discount. Now, a huge chunk of the domestic debt was being exchanged under the program. What that meant, Mr. Speaker, was that there was going to be a limited market for old bonds that had not been exchanged to participate in the new bond. Clearly, that would pose some disadvantage to people who are holding on to the old bonds. And so the Finance Minister went against his own commitment to exclude the the retirees and individual bondholders, to afford them an opportunity to participate in this new bonds so that they can have the flexibility of trading it on the secondary market. Speaker, that is exactly what the Finance Minister sought to do.
Honourable Member, just a minute. Honourable Members, in view of the nature of business before the House, I direct that sitting be held outside the prescribed period. That is the 2 o'clock. So please, you may continue.
Speaker, that was exactly what the Finance Minister sought to do by opening up an opportunity for pensioners or individual bondholders to also participate in the debt exchange program. Speaker, but I'm not surprised about the responses that we are getting from largely the general public and indeed from our friends on the other side, because clearly they see an opportunity to, as it were, even listening to the comments that has transitioned into a debate from what the Finance Minister presented, clearly want to play politics with the circumstances that we find ourselves in today. Mr. Speaker, I hear words like the Finance Minister should not touch pensioners, he should not take away people's money from them. Why is he doing this to our pensioners? Whipping up sentiments clearly and taking away the focus from what the reality and the issues are. And Speaker, with all due respect to my colleagues on the other side, we should not lose sight of the context within which, as a country, we find ourselves here today. I hear my friends on the other side making a call on the Finance Minister to resign. But we forget that we, as a House, approved all the deficit limits for the finance minister to go and fund the deficit that we had approved for him in this house. Yet, we make it look as if the finance minister, without recourse to parliament, goes out there and takes these obligations for which he solely ought to be held responsible. But clearly, this is a collective responsibility. And Mr. Speaker, we did not approve those limits for the finance minister to go out there and contract these funding to fund the budget, not for nothing. There was a basis for this House approving the budget that the finance minister has consistently sought to implement for the benefit of the good people of this country. So, Speaker, if you look between 2017 and 2019, Honorable Okudieto Ablakwa made references to Ghana being touted as the poster child of Africa. Indeed, it was true. We all witnessed those comments from the global community. So what happened post-2019 is a matter that ought to agitate all of us' mind. That we were faced with a global pandemic which was not known to anybody, and so we had to react in a certain manner to protect lives and livelihoods. Indeed, and in fact, I hear my colleagues on the other side make references to every time you are using COVID-19 and Russia, Ukraine as excuses. Why are other countries in Africa not suffering the same fate? Speaker, we conveniently forget that not many African countries, apart from Ghana, had energy sector bills that needed to be paid for. We conveniently forget that not every African country had a banking sector crisis that the IMF had identified as far back as 2014, that the assets were toxic and needed to be cleaned up. We conveniently forget that all these bills that the finance minister had to contract and pay for were unique to Ghana and not every other African country. And so, obviously, our response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian-Ukraine war is obviously going to be different from what other African countries would suffer. These are the facts. Mr. Speaker, as the Deputy Finance Minister, Abina Osiasari, indicated, we are where we are and we need to make progress. As a country, it is important for us to look at what the issues are and to make a determination whether indeed the course of action that the finance minister has taken or proposes to take, indeed the debt exchange is now closed, and he is indicating that there are some further steps that he is going to take to ensure that we have a successful IMF program. The question that we ought to ask ourselves is, do we not have to give the finance minister the requisite support that he needs to ensure that he goes through a successful IMF program to help resuscitate the economy for the benefit of all of us? I believe, Mr. Speaker, strongly that that is the focus that this House ought to be paying attention to. Indeed, if you look at the statement, especially in paragraphs 9, 11, 17, the finance minister provides a clear context why he took the decision to go through this program. He's provided responses with respect to what it is that he has done, the context of the debt exchange programs in paragraph 25 through to 33, and the steps that he's taking to ensure that we bring back our economy into a situation that the Ghanaian people would benefit to the pre-COVID environment where Ghana was indeed touted as a poster boy. And I'll urge all of us to throw our weight behind the finance minister and encourage him rather than condemn him so that he can work hard together with his team to bring our economy back on track. I thank you, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I added 1 minute to your time. Yes, it's now the turn of Honourable Mahama Ayarga.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, if this House recollects, when we discussed the business of the week, we on this side, led by Honourable Ablakwa, drew attention to the absence of an arrangement for the finance minister to appear before this House on the issue of the domestic debt exchange. So, Speaker, I added my voice to that call by reiterating that indeed something even more fundamental was at stake. And that fundamental issue was the very legality of the conduct of the finance minister. Is the conduct of the finance minister on his own, without the authorization of this parliament, to go and renegotiate terms and conditions of loans that he had entered into with bondholders and vary it to their detriment, whether or not that was legal? Mr. Speaker, that for me is the fundamental issue. It is not about exempting any particular category. It is whether or not our finance minister has legal authority to do what he's doing. And I want to demonstrate to the finance minister in my comment that he has no legal authority to go and renegotiate any loan without the approval of this House. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Ghana in Article 181, Clause 3, says that no loan shall be raised by the government on behalf of itself or any other public institution or authority otherwise than by or under the authority of an Act of Parliament. And then 4 says that an Act of Parliament enacted in accordance with Clause 3 of this article shall, Mr. Speaker, shall provide that the terms and conditions of a loan shall be laid before Parliament and shall not come into operation unless they have been approved by a resolution of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, a loan is defined by Clause 6, and it says, for the purpose of this article, loan includes any monies lent or given to or by the government on condition of return or repayment, and any other form of borrowing or lending in respect of which the monies will be paid from the consolidated fund. Mr. Speaker, debt securities issued by the government are undoubtedly loans. They are loans. Whether you are contracting the loan from an individual pensioner, or you are contracting it from a bank, or you are contracting it from the international financial markets, Mr. Speaker, it is a loan. And the law is clear that that loan, the terms, cannot and must be approved by this Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the Public Financial Management Act then goes ahead to make the enactment that is required in Article 18(1)(4). And it provides, Mr. Speaker, government borrowing and debt management. That is the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, Section 55. It says that subject to Article 181 of the Constitution and this Act, the minister has the authority to raise a loan on behalf of the government, both within and outside the country, and in local or foreign currency, subject to Article 181. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 56 of the Act provides that the terms and conditions of all government borrowings, the terms and conditions of all government borrowings shall be laid before Parliament and shall not come into operation unless the terms and conditions are approved by a resolution of Parliament in accordance with Article 181 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the Loans Act was repealed. Mr. Speaker, if you don't know, this Public Financial Management Act repealed the Loans Act. I have read the Loans Act as far back as when I was a law student. Mr. Speaker, it is obvious that all forms of public borrowings must be approved by this House. And so changing the terms and conditions must equally be approved by this House. It must be approved by this House. So the Minister of Finance cannot be a law unto himself and be running wrecks on the lives of innocent people by changing the terms and conditions of a loan that they have contracted with the government of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, this is what is in issue today. This parliament is being called upon to stand on the side of our citizens because they elected the president to manage their welfare, and they elected us to protect them from the same president. That is our constitutional arrangement. It is not about exempting just the pensioners. It's about ensuring that the finance minister is accountable to the people through this parliament by bringing whatever he has negotiated with the bondholders to this house so that we will be the ultimate deciders of whether it is acceptable. He cannot enforce the changes. It is unconstitutional. It is illegal. It is inappropriate. And that is what is in issue. Mr. Speaker, again, in one of the statements, after he had borrowed from the banks and rendered the banks penniless, he now tells the banks that they should go to Ghana Amalgamated Trust PLC so that they will be assisted with some funding from the Ghana Financial Stability Fund. Mr. Speaker, again, you ask the finance minister, who is GATT? Which law established GATT? Is GATT a public entity? And why would he imperil banks and now direct them to go to GATT, a private entity, and go and seek assistance? Under whose authority is he doing this? His own authority? Mr. Speaker, there is a parliament, and all of us sitting here are members of this parliament, and we must not allow something like this to happen. Mr. Speaker, he announces the Ghana Financial Stability Fund. He should tell us under which act he is establishing a Ghana Financial Stability Act. And he announces funding to be given to the Ghana Financial Stability Act. He should tell us his source of revenue and who authorized him as finance minister to release money under the name of a Ghana Financial Stability Fund to assist the banks. Mr. Speaker, if it is public fund, he must come here and get his approval. And he hasn't come here for any approval. Mr. Speaker, this finance minister has become a law unto himself. And this parliament must sit up. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, the taxpayers who queue every 4 years to vote us have been wasting their time. Mr. Speaker, we have been elected, all of you, on all sides, so that on this day, a day like this, when the executive is trampling on the rights of ordinary citizens, we will stand to be counted. We will stand to be counted. Mr. Speaker, this parliament cannot accept what has happened. All that the finance minister has done is illegal, is unacceptable, and if he doesn't bring it here for approval, Mr. Speaker, we will not allow it to stand. We will go to every institution under this constitution to make sure that we block what the finance minister has done. We must defend the bondholders. We must defend the pensioners. We must defend the owners of the banks. We must defend anybody who has given some confidence, invested confidence in the government of Ghana, of which we are all part, and lend his money to the government. We must defend them today. If we don't defend them, then we are all wasted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am one of those who demanded that the finance minister should be here, and it is because of this important constitutional matter.
Your time is up.
So, Mr. Speaker, in concluding, my basic comment is, Mr. Finance Minister, everything that you have done is inconsistent with the Public Financial Management Act, which vests you with all your powers. It is inconsistent with the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana. It is illegal, it is not fair, it's not right, you can't do it. Please stop what you're doing. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, it's the turn of Honorable John Kuma.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you very much. And I want to bring to the attention of the House the good news that the Finance Minister has brought to us today. That the domestic debt exchange program has ended successfully for Ghana, and we exceeded the target of 80% and actually got 84.9%. Mr. Speaker, that can only be said in gratitude to the nation especially to stakeholders, Parliament of Ghana, Council of State, the pension funds, organized labor, Ghana Association of Bankers, and individual bondholders. Mr. Speaker, this achievement has come at a huge sacrifice, but we have proven once again that we are a nation of patriots and full of nationalism, and we will rise to preserve Ghana on any day in any difficult times. And this is what the report is talking about. Mr. Speaker, we have been asked by our friends on the other side that how did we get here? And one friend said, Ghana used to be a poster child of economic growth. That achievement was done by the Honorable Ofori Atta. In 2017, 2018, 2019, Ghana achieved one of the fastest economic growth in the world. Mr. Speaker, not in Africa, in the world. We are where we are today because of misfortune. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, COVID struck Ghana. COVID struck the world. Ghana is not an exception. And as we speak today, Mr. Speaker, my friend asks, why is Ghana the only country going through debt restructuring? Mr. Speaker, maybe our friends are not following globally what is happening. As we speak today, over 30 countries have run to the IMF for one support or the other. As we speak today, Zambia is before the world for debt restructuring. Ghana is before the world for debt restructuring. Egypt is also going through debt restructuring. And several other nations are going through debt restructuring. So, Mr. Speaker, the evidence of what we have done with the borrowing is in all the sectors of Ghana. Speak about education sector, health infrastructure, talk about energy, talk about security, our roads. Every aspect of our country is evident of what we did with the borrowings that we took. But, Mr. Speaker, let me deal directly and give hope to our individual bondholders, especially our retirees today. On the accusation that the president promised there will be no haircut, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what has happened in the announcement that the finance minister has made today. There has been no haircut in the successful execution of the domestic debt exchange program. Mr. Speaker, and it has remained voluntary from day one until now. There has been no haircut. All principles of all stakeholders have been maintained. Mr. Speaker, we have also been accused of flip-flopping, promising that there will be no individual bondholders taking part in the domestic debt exchange. Mr. Speaker, the same accusers forgot that initially we promised to include the pension funds. Mr. Speaker, in a democracy, you govern by engagement. Engagement came to the conclusion that we must rather replace pension funds with individual bondholders. And Mr. Speaker, we want to thank individual bondholders for their graciousness in coming on board to accept so that we can preserve pension funds and deal with it differently in these circumstances. So, Mr. Speaker, there's no flip-flopping. We have done exactly what we needed to do to achieve success for this country. And we are told that people resign in Jamaica. We should look at Jamaica example. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the colleague, was Jamaica example caused by COVID? Has he read the circumstances that led to Jamaica's situation? He should not compare that to what is happening to our country and the world today. Mr. Speaker, I want to specifically address our grandfathers and our retirees who are here today in pain and requesting for a specific exemption, and to assure them that that exemption has been granted unto them. Mr. Speaker, subsequent to all the engagements and picketing, in a letter dated 15th February 2023, addressed from the Ministry of Finance to the Pension Bondholders Forum, reference Dr. Edu Entry on their appeal for exemption from pensioner bondholders from the DDEP. Paragraph 9 specifically, Mr. Speaker, paragraph 9 reads, from the foregoing, and to allay any concerns expressed in the meeting today, government want to state categorically, that all pension bondholders who opted not to participate in the exercise are exempted. The word is exempted from the DDEP. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure them respectfully and in all humility that if it is assurance they want, government has said it categorically, not just in words, also in writing, that all those who did not participate have been exempted. Mr. Speaker, why did some of them participate? Mr. Speaker, some of them participated, and I want to thank the gallant 1,340 individual retirees who took part in the DDEP program. Mr. Speaker, they took part because the records show that the offer government gave was very attractive. First of all, 80%, Mr. Speaker, and I mean 80% of category B, the retiree bondholders, had maturity over 5 years. It means some of them are waiting 10 years, 15 years, 18 years. Government says, I have curtailed the maturity to 5 years. So on the 4th year, you can get 50% of your principal. On the 5th year, you get absolute 100% of your principal. Mr. Speaker, and the only sacrifice which we requested was that, Mr. Speaker, and let's be honest here, the sacrifice government then requested of them in the offer is that instead of the 18.5 or the average of, let's say, 19%, we are going to give you 15% on your coupon. So you were going to sacrifice 4% as your contribution to the debt exchange program. Mr. Speaker, even that is not compulsory. Mr. Speaker, it is not compulsory. It is optional. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is optional. Government says you choose to pick it. Now, the 80%, Mr. Speaker, about 1,340 of the retirees said, okay, we will take advantage of the 5-year maturity period given to us. After all, we are still going to get our coupon rate of 15%. And the event, Mr. Speaker, most importantly, in the event that there is an emergency, which, let's say, a health condition, and I had to trade off the bond coupon that I have, there will be no market, or there's less market attraction for the old bonds as compared to the new bonds. Because as we speak today, per the results, almost 85% of all bonds have now been migrated into the new bond market. So there's a less bond market for the old market. That is not a government situation. It is a market determination that can affect the value of your bonds, Mr. Speaker. So this is why opportunity was offered. It is not to force anybody. It is not compulsory. And Mr. Speaker, they wanted the word exemption. We have put it in words, and I'm confirming it today. All those who did not participate, please rest assured, you are exempted. Your bonds will be paid, your coupons will be paid, and your principals will be paid.
Honourable member, your time is up. Your time
for
is
us
up.
to keep fighting.
Your time is up.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, so in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I just want to thank you and to thank the minister and to thank all Ghanaians who participated in giving us a successful domestic debt exchange. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. Honourable members, we now listen to the Minority Leader, Honourable Atta.
Mr. Speaker, to start with, I can't find the finance minister. Mr. Speaker, it's important that he's here to listen to our side of the debt exchange that is ongoing. Mr. Speaker, first, let me state that all what is happening was avoidable and is still avoidable. Mr. Speaker, domestic debt exchange is like a surgery. You don't do it if you are not sure of its repercussions. Mr. Speaker, you only do it knowing very well that it will solve a problem. But unfortunately, what the Minister of Finance and the government is doing today will hurt the people of Ghana big time. Mr. Speaker, I say this for a simple reason that there's a good reason why no African country has ever restructured its domestic debt. There is a good reason why Ghana has never defaulted in the payment of domestic debt. Today, Ghana is the first country in the entire Africa ever to restructure its domestic debt. We are the first country, this is the first time we have defaulted in the payment of our domestic debt. The Speaker, yesterday, Fitch downgraded Ghana to restrictive default. Simple put, we have defaulted in the payment of our domestic debt. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what surprises me is that instead of government addressing the concerns by burden sharing, they are engaging in burden shifting. Mr. Speaker, I say burden shifting for a simple reason that when you are confronted with this major economic catastrophe, you share the burden with your citizens. But what this government is doing is shifting the burden from the government to the ordinary Ghanaian. So, Speaker, by the time that this government is done with what they are doing, the insolvency we are seeing at the national level, the bankrupt Ghana, we will now see a bankrupt pensioners, bankrupt individuals, bankrupt banks. That is what this government is seeking to do. They are only transferring the bankruptcy from central government to individuals. Unfortunately, our country, as we speak, is bankrupt. Our country, as we speak, is simply insolvent. We cannot repay our debt. Simple put. Mr. Speaker, what will shock you is that this minister and the government is transferring the bankruptcy to pensioners. It's transferring the bankruptcy to individual bondholders. It is transferring this bankruptcy to rural banks, transferring this bankruptcy to credit unions. And the financial sector, don't be surprised that by the time that they are done and dusted, we will have to engage in banking sector cleanup once again. Because, the Speaker, our banks are going to obviously collapse. The Speaker, I have cited a Bank of Ghana report that says 17 banks are at risk as a result of what is happening. 17 banks. And so I urge the minister to be careful in what he's doing, not to transfer the bankruptcy to the private sector. The Speaker, to continue on this part, the Speaker, I say this for a simple reason that what is happening is self-inflicted. One, Mr. Speaker, this government started in 2017 by engaging in unsustainable borrowings. We were sitting here. Anytime the minister appears before us, he tells us that he's going for panda bond, sukuk bond, what do you call it, green bond, yellow bond, all sorts of bonds. You had to establish a whole unit responsible for bonds. A whole unit responsible for bonds. Today, this is your terminal report. This is your terminal report. Mr. Speaker, one time I called the minister Ofori bond because all what he knows is to engage in borrowings. I once said that this government only knows about one problem, one loan. This is the terminal report. It's self-inflicted. And when we asked him to start dealing with the problems, Mr. Speaker, he refused. He told us yes that he's not going to IMF. The deputy minister there, he said he's not going to IMF today, tomorrow, until the kingdom comes. Today you are there. Mr. Speaker, if they had gone to IMF earlier, all of this, we could have remedied it. Aside that, Mr. Speaker, after going to IMF, they said to us that they want to achieve staff-level agreement in record times. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to you today that our IMF program is poorly negotiated. Poorly negotiated, Mr. Speaker, and I show you the reason why I'm saying it's poorly negotiated. Mr. Speaker, another country that is in similar problem is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has to go through debt restructuring. And what Sri Lanka has done is that they have agreed with the IMF to reduce their debt to GDP by 28% over a period of 10 years. 10 years, from 2022 to 2032. Our minister responsible for finance, who led the negotiation, had agreed with the IMF to reduce our debt to GDP in present value terms from 103% of GDP to 55% of GDP within a period of 6 years. Mr. Speaker, simple put, Ghana seeks to reduce our debt to GDP by 45% plus in 6 years, as against Sri Lanka seeking to reduce this by 28% by 10 years. So, Mr. Speaker, simple put, for those of us who doesn't understand, this means that Ghana's adjustment is more harsh. It's harsher. Mr. Speaker, it is harsh in the sense that, Mr. Speaker, if Ghana had negotiated this in a longer horizon, domestic bondholders, debt restructuring, particularly domestic, would have been avoided. That is why Sri Lanka is not doing domestic debt restructuring. That is why they are not doing domestic debt restructuring. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, our colleagues, the Minister of Finance who led our team to the IMF to negotiate, did a very bad job. They did a very bad job. So all of this was avoidable. All of this was avoidable. Today we had to contend with a situation that even pensioners had to sacrifice part of their money. Mr. Speaker, I beg to say that what is happening in this country, time has come for us to put the brakes. Mr. Speaker, it is not for nothing that if you look at the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, in Article 1993, Mr. Speaker, pensioners, pension money is exempted for the payment of taxes. And the Constitution is specific about this, that pension should not attract taxes. Mr. Speaker, the intention is clear. The intention is to protect our pensioners. Today, government of Ghana is engaging in a fiscal policy that seeks to take money from pension funds, particularly pensioners. But what surprises me, Mr. Speaker, is that while the minister intends to exempt future pensioners, he's intended to tax, or he's intended to engage, not to exempt people that are already on pension. What sort of economic policy is this? What sort of economic policy is this, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, you are exempting future pensioners, but current pensioners, you don't want to exempt them. No wonder, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, that pensioners are picketing at the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Speaker, 2 days ago, 1993. Mr. Speaker, not long ago, our ex-Chief Justice Sophia Ekufu, had to be part of the picketing. And she said something very, very instructive. Mr. Speaker, some of the things she said, and I beg to read, Mr. Speaker, she said that, why are we in this mess? Nobody has fully explained to us. We took loans. What did we use the loans for? And where is the accountability? Exactly what was it used for? You government are not telling us about how we are going to be able to make things better. But you are saying, help me, and I help you. No, you help yourself first. Let me see if you are doing something seriously. Mr. Speaker, please, and Mr. Speaker, you went on to say that because we have seen this sort of things so many times. Mr. Speaker, she went on to say that I find this wicked. Mr. Speaker, I can agree with her. This is wicked. She went on to say that I find this disrespectful. Mr. Speaker, I agree with her. This is disrespectful. Mr. Speaker, she went on to say this is unlawful. Mr. Speaker, I agree with her. Mr. Minister, this is unlawful. Mr. Speaker, she went on to say that I find this totally wrong. Mr. Speaker, I can only agree with her. This is very wrong on your part, Mr. Minister. So she went on that the last thing you should do, especially when you don't have any service that are specifically geared at the comfort and the relief of the aged. Mr. Speaker, our former Chief Justice went on to say something very instructive and said that this is not Medofua Dadame. She said, Medofu Edimewu. Medofu Edimewu. Medofu Eriame. Medofu Asane. Mr. Speaker, and I agree with her. Because we cannot allow a country to be run the way it's being run. Mr. Speaker, I want to serve notice. I want to serve notice that based on Order 78 of our standing orders, that I wish to give notice, Mr. Speaker, that we, members of this House of the House, will file a motion to invite the House to pass a resolution directing the minister responsible for finance to exempt individual bondholders and pensioners from the domestic debt exchange. Mr. Speaker, I heard my colleagues say that they have exempted individual bondholders. Mr. Speaker, let him be aware that there is difference between self-exempt and issuer's exemption. Mr. Speaker, the rights are not the same. The rights are not the same, so don't think we don't know about this. Mr. Speaker, we will push for issuer's exemption for our dear pensioners. We will push for issuer's exemption for the ordinary bondholder. Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, we will not allow for someone to engage in reckless borrowing, put the country into a bottomless pit, and then the ordinary person would take the heat out of this. Mr. Speaker, to conclude on this matter, the minister raised 3 critical points in his statement. Mr. Speaker, one of them is that he said they will embark on fiscal consolidation, undertake debt operations, and secure financing assurance from development partners. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that is missing is the fact that he is not engaging in fiscal consolidation. Mr. Speaker, clearly, not long ago, after he read the budget, the president, obviously working for the government, has appointed 2 Supreme Court judges in November 2022 alone. He went ahead to appoint 15 appeals court judges, and then 21 high court judges, all put together 38. Is this a country that is engaging in fiscal consolidation? Mr. Speaker, I thought that he would use the opportunity to reshuffle the government and reduce the size of government. They are rather increasing it. Mr. Speaker, is this a government that is engaging in fiscal consolidation? Mr. Speaker, I don't see that. The budget statement does not point to a government that is engaging in fiscal consolidation. Please, we will not allow you to engage in burden shifting. We will share the burden with you. So we want to tell you that if you want us to pass your loans, pass your taxes, cut first, show us the way. Show us the way that you are ready to share the burden with the people of Ghana before you call on us to approve your taxes. We will allow you to shift the burden to the ordinary Ghanaian. And I serve notice now. So, Speaker, aside that, he went ahead and said in paragraph 29, Mr. Speaker, I read. He said, Mr. Speaker, government is however mindful of the fact that 82.9 billion bonds that were successfully tendered represent 64% of the outstanding stock, which is 130 billion at the end of December 2022. Mr. Speaker, in one breath, they said that they were able to achieve 80% plus. In another breath, it is actually 64%. In another breath, it's actually 64%. So, who are you trying to deceive? Who are you trying to deceive? It's 64%. That is your success rate, and not 80%. And take note, your own statement. Mr. Speaker, and finally, Mr. Speaker, finally, our minister has said that the SLA required, among others, that the completion of comprehensive debt restructuring covering domestic and external debt, in addition to fiscal consolidation efforts and other structural reforms. This is one of the fastest agreements for a country undertaking a debt restructuring. The Speaker, indeed, is one of the fastest, but it is the one that is mostly poorly negotiated because they rushed into it, didn't constitute proper and strong team to be able to negotiate with the IMF, and as a result, Ghana has had a bad deal. Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honorable members, it's now the turn of the majority leader, the leader of the House, Honorable Oseiche Mensah Bonsu.
Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the statement made in this House by the Minister responsible for Finance. Mr. Speaker, just so that we do not mislead ourselves, I think the concluding statement from the minority leader should be further interrogated because it's mixing up facts. The Speaker, in paragraph 26 of what the Minister presented to us, it says, the Ministry of Finance formally launched the domestic debt exchange on 5th December 2022, seeking to restructure about 137 billion Ghana cedis worth of government bonds and notes. As of December 2022, the total outstanding debt, eligible and non-eligible holders, amounted to 137 billion. Subsequent extensions of the dates and payments of maturities meant that the remaining stock reduced from 137 billion to 130 billion. Mr. Speaker, you come to the next paragraph. However, the eligible bonds as per the exchange memorandum meant an exclusion of pension funds and bonds that were subject to swap mechanisms for monetary and exchange rate policy operations. This then brought the eligible bonds for tendering to 97.7 billion. Mr. Speaker, if you don't read these things and you jump to conclusions, Mr. Speaker, you may injure yourself as he's injured himself. Mr. Speaker, so the minister, a former Deputy Minister for Finance, now the minority leader, please speak to facts. Please speak to facts and don't jumble the facts, otherwise we get it wrong. Mr. Speaker, so that is it. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Honorable Minority Leader before he began saying to us that the domestic debt exchange program is the single financial policy he has ever seen since his birth. Mr. Speaker, that might as well be true. But since the birth of the minority leader, has he ever heard of the invasion of a certain disease called coronavirus of 2019? Have you ever heard that? Since your birth, have you ever heard that a president woke up one day and then decided to attack a sovereign nation? One morning. Have you ever heard that? And have you ever heard of the repercussions that it's had on the world economy? Mr. Speaker, so let's be truthful to ourselves when we want to relate to this. Mr. Speaker, the borrowing crisis, I allude to that. Mr. Speaker, it includes the banking crisis that this government came and solved. It includes the solution that we offered to the doomsday crisis. The Speaker, fiscal space stripped away incrementally over time since we came, addressing the banking crisis, the aftershocks of the doomsday. The Speaker, they take as we pay contracts that we came to meet. All these contributed. Yes, Mr. Speaker, people are laughing over that. Today, the energy that we're generating, installed capacity, is in the region of how much? You should know. What do we require for us? So, Mr. Speaker, how much are we paying for the excess capacity? It's not as if we will not require it maybe given 10 years. Certainly by 10 years you require it. Was it necessary to have done those constructions that we did 8 years back? Was it? Was it necessary to have done what we did? Today, the optimum requirement for us is in the region of about 3.2 kilo megawatts, 3.2 thousand, I should say, megawatts. Installed capacity is close to 6,000 we have to pay. Which investor would do that? If you're a private person, would you do that? That's what we did. And this nation has to pay for it. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Adongo told us that the government debt is more riskier, I'm quoting him, is more riskier than lending to Adongo. That is well understood by him. It's more riskier. Government lending, borrowing is more riskier than lending to Adongo. You can only understand it. You only can understand that construction. Because that construction is not known to the king.
Supposed to be
it doesn't exist in the king's language.
But it is now riskier.
Mr. Speaker,
I do not know.
You know what?
You don't know why he's saying it. Because he used the word more and then riskier. So he's combining the two.
It doesn't exist in English. So English. Mr. Speaker, I thought. Mr. Speaker, so I'll leave. Mr. Speaker, and he says that MPP are the only property-owning Democrats. He doesn't even read his constitution. If you read your constitution, Article 36 clause 7 will tell you that all of us, Ghana is a property-owning republic. Care to read? It is not MPP. Please, regardless of your socialist antecedents, that is what the referendum was about, and all of us voted for the Constitution of 1992. Mr. Speaker, the minority leader says that Parliament has not approved of the domestic debt program. That, Mr. Speaker, there is when we approved of the budget statement and economic policy. The budget statement and economic policy that came to this House on Thursday, November 24, 2022, is the underpinning policy of government work program. Mr. Speaker, so once you approve of this, you've approved of the policy. I thought people should understand this. You don't understand that. And you are saying that it hasn't come to us. The paragraph that you quoted, the Speaker, and the paragraph 253 to 274. 253 to 274. Read it. It's contained there. And the debt operations are also covered under paragraph 275 to 280. All these are listed there. So they are the policy framework. So when you approve of this, if you read and understood, then you realize that you have approved of the economic policy. So when you come here to say that we haven't approved of the policy, then you didn't understand or perhaps appreciate what you were doing at the time. Mr. Speaker, the economy has since 2017 not been in this state. Of course, all of us do know that the records of 2017, 2018, 2019 speak for themselves. We have lifted this economy to a plateau level. Mr. Speaker, from what existed in 2012, 2013, 2014, and as at the point of exit, 2016, we were plateauing. And you know that the difference is clear until the advent of COVID-19. And even after COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, look at the growth of GDP in 2021. The economy was bouncing back. It was bouncing back. Then entered 2022. And we find ourselves down again. We have to lift ourselves up. The Speaker, for now, when the finance minister appeared before us, he admits that these are, I'm quoting him, these are very challenging times. And the Speaker, he made that admission by, I'm quoting paragraph 7 of the minister's presentation to us. It says, I wish to express our profound appreciation to the people of Ghana for their patience and support throughout these challenging times. The minister admits that these indeed are very challenging times. Mr. Speaker, the issues that he related to says and I'm quoting paragraph 13 of his presentation. It says, Mr. Speaker, through these and other decisive measures, government has managed and continues to pay compensation for all public sector workers. In some jurisdictions, in some countries, because of how the economies are suffering, some public servants, some civil servants have been laid off. It didn't happen in Ghana. The minister tells us or reminds us that we have kept the lights on. We have improved key infrastructure and maintained security despite the heightened and increasing risk. Mr. Speaker, last year, here in Parliament, we're telling ourselves and urging the minister responsible for defense and the interior and the national security ministers that in spite of our predicament, they should not take our security for granted. And we approved of huge loans for them to protect this country. Mr. Speaker, that is against all odds. Other countries that you are citing are not having those difficulties. That is what we should remind ourselves. We cannot afford to lower our guards, even in the face of these huge challenges. Mr. Speaker, the minister then goes on, paragraph 14, that following these interventions, financing of government and liquidity on our domestic market has severely reduced. An admission of the fact that, indeed, attributable to these factors, financial space has shrunk for us. And we must be sympathizing with the Minister of Finance, where we are as a country. Mr. Speaker, the minister then goes on to tell us that government undertook internal debt sustainability, which defined public debt to include publicly guaranteed debt of the central bank, partial non-guaranteed debt of state-owned enterprises, and expenditure arrears. This analysis revealed that public debt exceeded 100% of our GDP, and debt servicing accounted for more than half of total government revenues and almost 70% of tax revenues. This is an open admission. The Speaker, these things have been existing all this while. These things have been existing all this while. Finance ministers have come to this house and rendered accounts to us, not including the debt stock of state-owned enterprises. That is true. For the first time, the Speaker, we are including ESLA debts. Are we saying that ESLA debts did not exist before 2017? They did exist. Cocoa debts, they existed before 2017. The Honorable Eriko Poku will bear testimony to that. Cocoa board debts, they existed. We never included them, rendering account. Now IMF is insisting that we should do that, so that everything is straightening up. Mr. Speaker, as for those of them who are saying that, oh, the debt stock has ballooned from 122 billion to about 500 billion now, it is admissible. One must admit it. Except, I keep saying, if you dollar rate it, if you dollar rate the debt as at the point you left, you realize that it's not very extraordinary. It's not the best, we must admit, but it's not very extraordinary. Because when you inherited, the cedi to dollar was 1.2 to $1. So when the debt stock increased to 122 at the point of exit, the Speaker, when you do the calibration, you realize that at the time you were leaving, the debt stock was close to $42 billion. Yes, when you do it, it was about $42 billion. Mr. Speaker, let's not kid ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. So you see, don't attribute the debt stock alone to this administration if you want to do what is right. But we are where we are. We are where we are. How do we get out of it? How do we get out of it? The other day, when we met in this house, we were saying to ourselves that we should devise a scheme where the borrowings of any administration over a 4-year period perhaps may not exceed a certain percentage of GDP. Is it the case that maybe you get to, if you agree on 55%, you get to 55%, and the next succeeding government, because it's 55%, will have his hands tied behind his back? You see, let's have a proper think through. It's the reason why some of us have been urging that we should have a committee on the economy in-house to deal with some of these matters, so that together, for those of them who understand, I believe they will listen and understand. Those of them in the flanks who don't understand can make noise. Mr. Speaker, so let's come to the realization that we are where we are, attributable not to one government, but it's a country burden. How do we lift ourselves up? How do we lift ourselves up? So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that when the minister said to us, paragraph 23, at the inception of the negotiation with the IMF, it was agreed that Ghana would have to address its economic challenges on three folds. One is embarking on fiscal consolidation. Two is undertaking debt operations and securing financial assurances from the development partners, which is what he has responded to us. Mr. Speaker, the issue about pensioners, he has related to. And when we were on recess, they came to us, the minority leader, myself, and some other in the expanded leadership. I think the issue that they raised primarily was lack of engagement. See, maybe the communication was not the best. You must admit. Other than that, and I said that nothing can substitute for public engagement. Because if maybe we had done so earlier, perhaps all these brouhaha would not be cascading to the level that people are talking about. But the minister has spoken, has given some assurance.
Your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, let me leave on borrowed time for a brief while.
More than 1 minute.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, just to reiterate the assurance given by the minister that the government will honor the coupon payments and maturing principles like all government bonds. The assurance to them, for those of them who submit. In fact, we must admit that we are in turbulent times, and it's voluntary. You go on board, and there's some assurance that you will have a guaranteed payment of 15%. If you elect not to be there, which is your choice, then you submit and subject yourself to the vagaries of weather, which could be very, very difficult and traumatic. Mr. Speaker, today, I'm being asked for the contract. Today, our own loans that we took from the banks, you know how much you are paying in terms of interest, even though at the outset it wasn't like that. So that's the fact of life. But, Mr. Speaker, I would want to plead that this is a good endeavor. We should continue, and the finance minister should continue to publicly engage, so that people would have better appreciation of where we are, understand that we should all be contributing. Just as members of parliament are also contributing. And we hope we should be building confidence and trust. Once we open up much more than we have done, or maybe we did initially, people will come to appreciate and agree. And I will strongly urge the minister to continue from here, not end it in parliament, but to continue the public engagement. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I thank you for the opportunity. And I believe all of us are wiser today after hearing the finance minister on this domestic debt exchange. I don't want to talk about the legalities that my colleague, the Honorable Mahama, raised. I disagree with him completely, because this is not a new loan that is being contracted. I disagree with him totally. It's not a new loan. But we can have another platform to debate that. I agree. I believe that you are totally wrong in your understanding of the law. I thank you very much.
Honorable members, let me, on behalf of the House and all of you, thank the Minister for responding to our invitation to come to brief the House, which he has done comprehensively in a statement. And I want to commend members for the comments, even though the comments went into the arena of debate. But the situation demanded that. But I didn't get indication from the minister. You want to wind up? You want to wind up? Oh, okay. Because it's a statement, usually we don't wind up, but you want to come and thank members.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And really, much appreciation for the comments that have come from the submission that I made. Mr. Speaker, we came in 2017 and met a very difficult economic situation. And Mr. Speaker, we did not shirk away from it. And during the period through 2020, as you said, Honorable Okujeto mentioned, we were the poster child and the black star that was shining. So yes, in this current predicament, we would also navigate ourselves through it successfully. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of whether we have negotiated properly or not, let me be very clear that yes, Sri Lanka might have negotiated and gotten an SLA sometime in August. The consequence of that is that they are still not getting board approval. We can't afford that. We have to get a board approval by March, and we are en route to being successful with that. And that's important. Mr. Speaker, we mentioned the impossible triangle of fiscal consolidation, debt treatment, and financial assurance. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about fiscal consolidation, it's really not only about revenue increases that we are looking to do. A significant issue, as was raised by the chairman of the Finance Committee, is one of expenditure controls. And those have come very clearly in our engagements over the past few months and our assessment of what we must do to be able to do that. So, Mr. Speaker, I assure you that those expenditure controls would happen. Mr. Speaker, we've been very impassioned about the issue of pensioners and retirees. Mr. Speaker, I just want to be very clear that the reason for this whole debt treatment to be voluntary, it's because you did not want to take anybody's money from them. Completely voluntary, that it was your choice or not, and we'll have to manage that. So that was very clear. Mr. Speaker, we then also believed that the debt treatment will be successful, which means, in effect, Mr. Speaker, that you are going to get very few of the old bonds in the system. And it's important to realize that. Now, the government does not control the market. So how do you then shield all those who may not voluntarily tender from the vagaries of the market? And that is why, Mr. Speaker, in realizing that 80% of retirees' bonds will mature over 5 years, we therefore brought the maturity to 5 years so that the time value of money was saved and captured. But more significantly, Mr. Speaker, it also meant that in the event of emergency, you were holding a paper that was common, that was tradable. So that then gave a choice for bondholders to do. Most of them declined not to, which is perfectly fine, so that they will hold their old bond. And therefore, in yesterday's discussion with them, I sent a letter out to their convener stating what my colleague, Deputy Minister, mentioned very categorically, that all pension holders who opted not to participate in the exercise are exempted from the DDEP. But Mr. Speaker, as we advise people about the future in very tough economic circumstances, I think it's our responsibility for everybody to be aware of the risk that may occur from the market. And that is why we encouraged that people trade in their bonds. But clearly, we've also stated categorically that your interest, coupons, and your principal would be honored. So, Mr. Speaker, let's put it to bed here. The government at no point in time looked at an opportunity to take money from pensioners, because we made it, Mr. Speaker, voluntary. So you can't say that a voluntary exercise deems that I'm taking money from you. Then we gave an option which you were free to take, and most of them legitimately believe that they will hold their bonds to the very end. And if the board are going to hold their bonds to the very end, they don't require any option, which is perfectly fine. And we assured them that, yes, your coupons will be honored, your principal will be honored. They then went further that even though you've given me that assurance, I still want to hear the word exempt. So yesterday we did that. So please, with the issue, as biblical as it is, protect your orphans and your widows and your old people, yes, that is why it was voluntary from the beginning. No coercion by the state of our people. And our president was very clear about it. Don't go and legislate it in which you then say, tomorrow when you wake up, all your bonds have been changed. But make it voluntary so that it's their choice. But even though it's voluntary, it will then be subject to market vagaries. And so therefore, what option do you give them? And that's where we came up with 15%, allowed and brought the maturity to 5 years. So you can then begin to ask, what is the problem? And that is where Majority Leader is saying, maybe we did not communicate right. But truly, all of us sitting here, all the hyperbole, all the discourse, this is what the government or the people of Ghana did. And that is fact. So, Mr. Speaker, I really appreciate this opportunity to make it very clear to us that this is a caring government, was clear on what this meant, and we made sure that we put things in place, but make it very clear so that people do not lead people astray. Mr. Speaker, we thank you for that. With regards to mentioning of Sri Lanka and Jamaica, Jamaica was a very different time. Sri Lanka, we are still trying to get a decision on the board, and we need to go to the board fast, and therefore the reasons why we negotiated what we negotiated without apology. And we will not, Mr. Speaker, run away from this problem. We are confident that we will solve it because we inherited such a situation and we solved it to create one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So this would again happen. So let me, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity. Let's rest assured that we will stabilize this economy and get our growth and get our shine back as we should. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Honorable members, thank you.
Yes, Honorable Minister, let me assure you.
Well, so what you see now are live images from Parliament. Of course, the Finance Minister, Ofori Atta, there wrapping up his comments on the domestic debt exchange. Well, he's been on the floor of Parliament updating the House on how government has fared with that program. He has at least provided clarity now that pensioner bondholders who continue to picket at the office or his ministry, which is the Ministry of Finance, will now be exempt. At least that's the assurance we're getting from the minister as he appeared before Parliament today. And as you can see in the pictures there, outlining updates on Ghana's roadmap to access an economic bailout with the International Monetary Fund. Now, although Ofori Atta says he's exceeded his target, the 80% threshold for the domestic debt exchange program, he's asking for Parliament's support, which is required in the next phase of the IMF bailout. And that's where you heard him round off on. The Speaker of Parliament there in your shots will be crossing you back to the House shortly. But for those of you who missed it, here's the assurance from the Finance Minister that the pensioner bondholders will be exempt. Plus, he's been giving updates on the domestic debt exchange program.
To implement it. And so at any time you are
the Finance Minister. Of course, we'll get back to that sound. The Speaker still making some pronouncements there. And in fact, some other members of Parliament have been reacting. We'll get to that shortly. But I want us to, first of all, just get that clarity from the Finance Minister himself when he was speaking moments ago, indicating what the terms will be now post the debt exchange program. 82 out of the 97 million, that's where we've reached as a nation. He continues to indicate that it was a voluntary exercise, hence the need to ask for all stakeholders, including individual bondholders, to be a part of the process. But as you have it, the pensioner bondholders will not have any of that. He's giving clarity now that they will be exempt out of that exercise and that government will honor their bonds. We can now listen to the Finance Minister. Once we get that confirmation from the minister, I will cross you live to Parliament and then bring you some reactions, because other members of the House as well are equally concerned about this. You saw that feature quite well on the floor when, of course, we had the likes of Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa and other MPs from across the aisle indicate their position on this matter. The Speaker is still giving some updates there on what may happen after deliberations today. But what's setting is that definitely we're moving into that next phase, as we would expect for the International Monetary Fund program with the IMF. And that's where, of course, the Finance Minister is indicating that he would need the support of Parliament as a whole. We'll take you to Parliament shortly. Let's now listen to the Finance Minister make that address earlier today.
Is being established by government with the help of development partners to provide liquidity and solvency support to banks, pension funds, insurance companies, fund managers, and collective investment schemes to ensure that they are able to meet their obligations to their clients as they fall due. Mr. Speaker, government remains committed to the well-being and dignity of our senior citizens and pensioners. Indeed, it has personally, Mr. Speaker, caused me great distress as a number of our pensioners have picketed at the premises of the Ministry of Finance since Monday, February 6, 2023. I have already indicated in my press release, Mr. Speaker, dated 14th February 2023, The government will honor their coupons, payments, and maturing principles, like all government bonds, in line with government's fiscal commitments. Mr. Speaker, in seeking to understand the concerns of our senior citizens, I have met with them on 3 occasions. The most recent was yesterday, 15 February 2022, where I explained the terms of the new bonds. Mr. Speaker, I subsequently wrote to their convener, letting him know, Mr. Speaker, that all pensioners who did not participate in the bond offering are exempted. Mr. Speaker, I pray that puts paid to the need for our senior citizens to picket at the ministry. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank all those who helped in those discussions for this. Mr. Speaker, this significant milestone of the success of the domestic debt exchange program would also build momentum for external restructuring program, which has also commenced. As part of this progress, Ghana has officially asked its bilateral creditors for a debt treatment initiative under the G20 Common Framework. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, Ghana co-hosted a meeting with the Paris Club, including both Paris Club and non-Paris Club creditors, on 10th January 2023. We reiterated the requests for expedited treatment under the Common Framework and presented our economic and fiscal outlook, as well as the steps undertaken so far with the DDEP. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, we made it known that we expect the creditor committee to be formed in an expeditious way to facilitate the program to ensure that we are able to go to the fund board in March. We have started the process of negotiating in good faith with our commercial creditors. 2 preliminary discussions and exchange of information have started on a good footing with representative committees and advisors. The members have indicated their commitment to establish a creditor committee to assess Ghana's request for debt treatment under the Common Framework by end of February 2023. We hope, Mr. Speaker, our commercial creditors will understand our desire to negotiate with our bilateral creditors softer terms than the ones we anticipate to propose to them, as a speedy process with the bilateral creditors is needed to pave the way for the discussion with private creditors. Mr. Speaker, we are also approaching major creditors like India and China to ensure that our discussions with the Paris Club is accelerated. Mr. Speaker, we've also negotiated discussions with the representative of our international bond holders and their advisors. Substantive discussions are due to start with them in the weeks to come. The government recognizes the continued importance of the DDEP in closing the financing gap and enabling the government to meet the debt sustainability target of 55% of debt to GDP in present value terms by 2028. Mr. Speaker, we have already indicated that these debt operations were a composite part of a broader government response strategy for addressing the current challenges, while we continue to secure an IMF program to boost confidence in the economy. We are complementing this by enhancing our domestic mobilization efforts. Mr. Speaker, as already stated in the House in November, we did lose access to the international capital markets at the beginning of 2022. At the same time, budget implementation was confronted with domestic financing challenges from the auctions, as well as lower than estimated domestic revenue mobilization. This presented a very challenging macroeconomic environment during 2022, leading to a widened financing gap of the budget, and therefore became necessary for the Bank of Ghana to fund shortfalls at the auction market to avoid disorderly default and prevent a deeper crisis. Mr. Speaker, it was necessary for the government to seek financing from the Bank of Ghana to augment its fiscal operations for the year. The Bank of Ghana last week concluded work on its financial accounts for 2022 and reports that the total overdraft extended to government for 2022 was 37.9 billion. Mr. Speaker, in line of Section 30, Clause 6 of the Bank of Ghana Act 2022, Axis 1-2, I'm using this platform to inform the legislature of the financing of the budget by the Bank of Ghana. The domestic debt exchange exercise and the external debt restructuring program will make such financing unnecessary going forward in 2023 and beyond. Mr. Speaker, all these efforts will be greatly enhanced if the income tax amendment bill, the excise duty and excise...
Also, excerpts of what actually transpired when the finance minister gave that assurance that pensioner bondholders will be exempt. But we see now in our shots Dr. Edu Anani, who speaks for the pensioner bondholders. Let's get their reaction.
Yeah. It means the picketing has ended. It has ended. And Ghana, our beloved country, is free forever. So, Honorable, what do you make of the debates on both sides? Well, it's good they spoke about all this. You see, we shouldn't have taken our elderly through this process. But of course, it shows that this country, there will always be people who will stand up for some of these things. And the young ones, I'm encouraging you that when it gets your time, look at what is happening. Say, no, this one is not right. I will fight for it. And if we get many of you also doing that, the nation will be a successful nation.
So that is Dr. Edu Anani, very confident that the minister's words that they will be exempted will be carried through, and that the finance minister will truly live up to his words. The pensioners are excited. You can see them greeting each other. They are very happy that they've finally gotten this exemption that they've been asking for a long time. Dr. Edu Anani, who has been leading the team, says he's very confident that it's going to happen. There's a news conference just about to happen with the majority side, so we will just head out of Parliament and then we can go there. But we've heard from Finance Minister Ofori Atta, who has publicly announced in Parliament today that pensioner bondholders who did not sign up for the domestic debt exchange program are exempt. Their bonds will be paid fully. The coupons and everything will be paid when they fall due. And we've had spirited debate from both the minority and the majority side. The House has just adjourned to tomorrow, and we are going to listen to that news conference that is going to happen by both the minority and majority leadership. So we will get that, and then we will be back.
Kweku Asante giving us the latest from Parliament in a moment, any moment actually from now. We will definitely see the minority leadership plus the majority side address the House. But don't forget that that debate even started on the floor of Parliament when some minority MPs, and in fact from across the aisle, even those on the majority side, had their views to share on this domestic debt exchange. We just want to go back and listen to some of the concerns raised by the MPs moments ago.
It's fair that members of Parliament will have at least 10 minutes each to speak to this matter. Mr. Speaker, I believe that as minority leader, I should be given 20 minutes minimum. 20 minutes minimum to respond to some of the concerns that the minister has raised. Mr. Speaker, this is a major threat to our economy.
And definitely that was a time at which, of course, the minority was making a point that they needed an extension of time to make some inputs, very critical ones, of course, into this whole domestic debt exchange program. But fast forward, the Speaker made his ruling, of course, limited the time to 7 minutes each for the other members of the House, while leaving leadership to at least make an intervention for about some 20 more minutes. It's the reason why that sitting actually moved on for quite some time now to where we are today. And of course, we're expecting the address from the man you see in the shots there. Of course, Dr. Kesela Toforson to give us that update from the minority side shortly. But let's listen to other members of the House as well speak on the matter from across the aisle, raising concerns and what they have to say about this domestic debt exchange program.
Broke
The economy has been so mismanaged that they can't even honor the coupon payments on money that government took from not just ordinary individuals, but from our old mothers and fathers whose survival, whose livelihood depends on the little coupons that they get. Mr. Speaker, let me do a quick analysis. If you were to invest 100,000, just 100,000, let's even assume that Mr. Ofori Atta and the finance minister says they will give you all your money. With the rate of inflation at more than 50%, in 1 year, by the time you take your principal, the actual value, which is the purchasing power, would have been reduced to 66,000. And you can just check. Let's check the value and discount it to the present value with that rate. And if you apply the discounting factor, you know the present value of a future.
And so that's John Jinapol. A quick update for you. What you see now is the Deputy Minister for Finance, Dr. John Kumah, addressing the media after fallouts from Parliament today. Let's listen in.
Instrument available will be the T-bill, the Treasury bill. That's why you saw that. So it is not any exemption about bonds. It's a special case.
Will you explain?
Very positive, very progressive. It's good news for Ghana that we have achieved this 85% in the domestic debt exchange program. It's very good news for our economy. It will help to restore confidence immediately.
Doc, two questions. First of all, are you happy as a finance minister or deputy finance minister that our economy is not strong enough to withstand storms? And then two, will you explain to us the difference between self-exemption and issuer exemption?
Okay, well, I'm a deputy finance minister to solve problems. Unfortunately, COVID came, and no finance minister in the world prepared for COVID. Ghana is not an exception. America had to print money to sustain the economy. EU had to go through the same thing. You know what UK went through, Greece, Sri Lanka, Zambia, Egypt. There is no country that is not struggling from the effect of COVID. So it's not about whether you are happy or not. That is the reality. It's an act of God you have to deal with. But I'm happy that I'm part of the solution. I'm happy that particularly our finance minister has been firm in spite of all the agitations. He's been firm and focused in delivering a solution to this problem. And I'm happy to be part of that team that is thinking outside the box to provide solutions to this problem. But particularly we thank Ghanaians for the patience and understanding, especially bondholders who have taken on these sacrifices to anchor the economy. What was the next one? There's no exemption, please. Everybody will be paid. So there's no... No, we'll do the external. It's also ongoing. Finance Minister Eddie Asemde and the better Parliament domestic bond exchange.
Also, that's Dr. John Kumah, of course, indicating his belief in the measures announced by the finance minister today, of course, indicating that the COVID-19 pandemic was part of the challenges that is now accounting for where we are today. But the minority disagrees. We're set to see the minority leader, Dr. Kaisel Atto-Forson, address the press shortly. But I want you to also take a listen to other members of the House on the domestic debt exchange.
Government is saying that it is so broke, the economy has been so mismanaged that they can't even honor the coupon payments on money that government took from not just ordinary individuals, but from our old mothers and fathers whose survival, whose livelihood depends on the little coupons that they get. Mr. Speaker, let me do a quick analysis. If you were to invest 100,000, just 100,000, let's even assume that Mr. Ofori Atta and the finance minister says they will give you all your money. With the rate of inflation at more than 50%, in 1 year, by the time you take your principal, the actual value, which is the purchasing power, would have been reduced to 66,000. And you can just check. Let's check the value and discount it to the present value with that rate. And if you apply the discounting factor, you know the present value of a future investment that you are supposed to earn. As if that is not enough. As if that is not enough. The bank Bank of Ghana, as of 2021, had advanced over 30 billion to the government. Then in 2022, the Bank of Ghana, and I remember Honorable Atufosin raised that issue, that they were giving government so much money. The Bank of Ghana issued a statement and told us that it's an overdraft. An overdraft is a short-term debt instrument, so you must pay immediately. Immediately, the Minister of Finance got the 40 billion. He announced that he has converted it into bonds. Why do you do this? You see, the issue is credibility. That is why the women and the men who are old, they don't trust the minister. Because look, the president told us that there will be no haircut. It turned out that it was false. The minister himself promised us that individuals will not be part of this whole domestic debt instrument. He's here. He's on record. On record. Then on the eve of Christmas, he issued a statement that he will now exempt pensioners, and he's now bringing individual bondholders into the whole free. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious matter. This is not an NDC matter. This is not an MPP matter. This is a national issue where all of us ought to put our political difference aside, look straight into the Minister of Finance and tell him, the minister, you will not touch the pensioners today, you will not touch them tomorrow. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, this House, I plead with you, and I plead with leadership, that we should pass a resolution that for the first time we are putting our political difference aside. We should pass a resolution telling the minister, I'm not interested in his resignation. If he doesn't want to resign, that is their own cup of tea. Because the problem is not just Ofori Atta. The problem is Ofori Atta, Dr. Bawumia, and Akufo-Addo. This trilogy, this three, they are the problem of Ghana. And Mr. Speaker, problems cannot solve problems. Solutions solve problems. I'm therefore calling on Parliament to pass a resolution compelling the Minister of Finance, just as he has done in paragraph 27, page 7, that all the pensioners would be exempted from this domestic debt exchange. Yeah! Mr. Speaker, not just exempt them. Allow them to clap. Not just exempt them. The bondholders, the pensioners, individual bondholders, their coupon rate, their principal, and the term of the original agreement should be sustained, must stand and stand firm as far as some of us are. Yeah! Mr. Speaker, we must learn as a nation. I want to commend people who have stood with us. People like Kwame Pianim, people like Kofi Amwabin, people like Sophia Akufu, and even in this house, I salute the venerable majority leader, the Honorable Oseche Mensah-Bonsu, for his stance on the individual debt bondholders as far as we are concerned. Yes. You have demonstrated leadership, leader. And that you have a conscience. And I call on you to do same before the old men and women watching us today. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 ways that government raises revenue. And Honorable Kwakwati, you mentioned 2. 1 is taxation, 2 is borrowing. But there's a 3rd one. That is seigniorage, printing of money. How can the Bank of Ghana advance more than 40 billion to the government of Ghana in 1 fiscal year? What is the size of Ghana's economy? What is the size of Ghana's economy? I'm not surprised that the IMF has appointed Leonard Chumo as the financial supervision advisor to the Bank of Ghana. Mr. Chumo, please let me thank you and welcome you to Ghana. But let me plead with you, please open your eyes at the Bank of Ghana. I cannot trust that governor in one way or one bit. I beg you, open your eyes. Open your eyes. Scrutinize the documents and ensure that the right thing is done. Because in this chamber, when they brought the Sino-Hydro agreement, we cautioned them. It's not as if we did not caution them. We are also Ghanaians. Yes, we might be interested in political power, but we are Ghanaians. We told you that your so-called barter trade will not work. Today you've gone round and round and round.
Honorable member,
And you are here. Mr. Speaker, on that note, I want to end by appealing to you that the fiscal responsibility regulation that was suspended ought to be reinstated so that we can avoid this cliff. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. God bless you.
Honorable members, we have been joined by a very high-powered delegation from the German Parliament. They are here on the...
Well, so don't forget that we'll be crossing over shortly to Parliament, where the Minority Leader, Dr. Kisela Tuforsen, will be addressing the press any moment from now. But you're still with us here on The Pulse. When we get back, we'll unpack the details of this update given by the Finance Minister.